Wow, Neil Armstrong. Hey, wait a minute. You're supposed to be on the moon. I just saw it on TV.
Oh, there's a tape delay and with all solar winds.
Nobody that I know of in my field uses the so-called scientific method. In our field, it's by the seat of your pants. It's leaps of logic. It's guesswork.
You don't see the curvature of the earth. That stuff is flat.
Piecing up the puzzle, need a buster bubble, evil gonna crumble, yeah? Sit down, be humble, got the body by the fumble. You'll get mad, cause at this fight I'm about your uncle.
And then they call me the liar. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable the pathetic techniques that they have to use to prove their heliocentric model.
Vibes at the president, Jeran got the evidence. Arrow slaying Jesuits and Zack is evident. That the earth electric and its residential residence is heavens, and I hope to settle in like some sediment. If we so wrong, why they lying to discredit it? That's not too intelligent. That's a guy, not an in court, but we ain't really in the settlement. It's time to awaken from the pseudoscience sedatives.
Blowbusters taking up.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
Yes, it is. It is as simple as that. And welcome to Glowbusters, everybody. Today's show is titled Understanding the Ether's Role in Creation. And the reason I titled it this is because I want to talk to you guys about a few things that have been coming out. One of the main things that I think is kind of went through the community over the past couple of weeks is the EwarAnon videos. You guys are all familiar with the EwarAnon videos. And, you know, overall, I think he did a really good job in general. But there were people in the community that, you know, are definitely not entirely on board with what he was saying, specifically about Tartaria. Okay. Now, I hadn't really looked into it that deeply. I thought it was pretty interesting, and because of the fact that Martin Leakey was looking into it. And, you know, Martin claims, well, last week or the week before anyway, he said that he was at some archaeological site, which is really going to blow the lid off this Tartaria thing, right? So I'm just thinking this is really cool. And, you know, so Martin's on board and EwarAnon's on board and everybody's talking about this and it's great. And then I was surprised to hear other people who I definitely respect their opinion were not 100% on board with it. And in fact, it kind of rejected it in a lot of ways. And one of those people was Karen B. It's like, wow, that's pretty crazy. So I asked her why. And she said simply because that there was not enough there in her mind to validate, you know, tying all these cultures together with that architecture. And it's like, okay, I can accept that because, like I said, I have not looked into it that deeply. And so we went on. So then EwarAnon came out with the video about 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about, you know, his previous work, and that basically, I'm going to play little bits of it here for you in a little bit, but he's basically saying that he had a little journey where he went to a gift shop in one of the places, I think it was in Liverpool, that had old-timey pictures and, kind of the history of the place. And he opens up this little book, and there are all of the things, photographic proof that, kind of contradicted everything that he was saying. And it's like, so obviously he looked at that, and I'm sure, he probably felt like, oh my God, I really screwed up, because, he went pretty far into depth, and he made some pretty hardcore assertions that, all of this seems to be tied to Tartaria. So he says that, the only thing he could do is the right thing, and that would be to come out and make a retraction and withdrawal of it, and try and correct it and not go down that road again, which of course is the right thing to do, the admirable thing to do. And I think that's great, right? So the one thing that he did say in that, though, is he also was talking about the ether and form. And he said a few things in there about ether and architecture that, he doesn't believe that there's any evidence tying the physical form, like of these churches or these really, holy places, to formations of the ether. And he's not going to pursue that anymore. And so when I saw that, I wrote a little note a couple weeks ago and said, no, I really need to dispute this. And he wrote me back, and he said, he clarified what he was saying, but, and in some senses I agree with him, but I also believe that, there is absolutely evidence for, ties between the behavior of the ether and the way it can be manipulated and the physical world that we live in. Right. And I'll go into those a little bit later on today. So that's kind of, where we went to with that. And, in looking at that, of course, we're also going to be going back and looking at some basic cymatics stuff, because this is exactly what this is about. I mean, cymatics, if you've ever studied it, absolutely flipping amazing. What can be done with vibrating like Lyco powder on a 2D surface, or putting something in a 3D container that you can actually manipulate and vibrate, and what will manifest inside of it. It's mind-blowing. It really is. Especially when you hit like pure notes, like solfeggio tones, and then go into harmonics. And then you go into not only harmonics, but accompanying tones, right? Complementing tones or chords, things like that. All of a sudden, you start seeing these manifestations come to life with things that literally look like life, right? One of the things I'll show you today is, Hans Jenny showed a demonstration with Lyco powder that basically was showing that he can mimulate. That's a good word, mimulate. He can mimulate a human spine, right, and a circulatory system. And it's absolutely mind-boggling, how this is actually done, right? So I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking, if that isn't the connection, between physicality in form and the energetic, part of this universe that brings our reality into life, I don't know what is, right? Now, can I say without a doubt, can I tell you everything about the ether and what we know about it, and what we know everything about it? No, we don't know everything about it, but I do know that it must be there. We have technology that's based on it actually operating. And so that in and of itself makes a very large statement as to the existence of the ether. And of course, as you all know, I should know that because I was the one that got burned with the 15 degree per hour rotation of the ether, right? Well, so it's not light that was doing that, but it was the medium that is carrying that light around, or that I should say that is having that is being excited or having energy induced into it. Okay. And, they've known about this for, literally hundreds of years. And it's amazing. And like I said, everything came to a stop when they brought Einstein into the picture. And because they didn't want to deal with the model that was basically saying, hey, look, the earth is flat. They came out with everything possible to discredit it, even the ether, when Einstein himself said that he couldn't imagine a world without the ether. It's like, what? So I don't know. Did they get to him? I don't know. Was he insane? Well, maybe. He wasn't that smart. I do know that. He plagiarized a lot of people's stuff. And like I said, they rolled him in like he was some sort of genius, right next to God. And frankly, he looks like a fuzzy-haired crackpot, just like Tesla said that about him. There was nothing that he ever did. He never has any notable accomplishments that he ever made. He has one patent, or copyright, or what, a patent, I guess, and that is on a blouse, right? A men's blouse type shirt, but nothing to do with anything technical or in physics. The theory that he has come forward with, the general theory of relativity and special theory of relativity are both complete BS. But if you want to be a scientist in today's world, you have to accept those as axiomatic in science. Well, it's kind of funny because so many people don't accept that, especially when they really look at things very closely, and they realize that there must be something there that is a medium that is being worked with to create our reality around us. And for the last 3, 4, or 5 Nobel laureates that have actually gotten the Nobel Prize, I think every single one of them has stated their belief in the ether. And to me, it's not even a belief. It's a foregone conclusion. It's there. I wasn't measuring nothing when we were doing those tests. We were seeing variations in it, expected variations. We were able to predict what we were going to see. Of course, Aries failure backed all this stuff up, and there you have it. So anyway, go ahead.
One thing, we have a black screen. I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but
okay, yeah, I'm sorry. No, I wasn't really showing anything. I was just talking. I'm talking.
No, I know, and it was very nice talk. So I didn't want to interrupt.
Okay, no worries. All right, so there, I'll play some memes in the background or something for you. So anyway, so that's kind of what we're up against, and it keeps coming back around to this over and over and over again, is these Einsteinian ridiculous physics. It's just not true, and there's too much proof otherwise. And to proceed forward, and like EwarAnon, he said he wasn't even going to consider it anymore. It's like, that's a mistake. That is a blatant mistake, because we don't have anything better, right? It's kind of like people will look at the flat Earth map or the A.E. Gleason map, and they'll say, oh, well, that's inaccurate because of the apparent location of the stars and sun. Therefore, it's got to be completely bunkum. Well, that's not true at all. The AE map works quite well. We all know that. On the ground, it's deadly accurate. It's used all over the place in industry and navigation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, it's not so good at agreeing with these sky predictions, right, that people make for it. So people tend to dismiss it out of hand, say it's bunk, and if you push it, you're pushing a false narrative, and you're a shill, right? I mean, this seems to be where it always goes. So even the flat earthers do stuff like that, right? The mainstreamers are saying, well, if you don't believe in Einstein, then obviously you didn't go to school, you're not an engineer, you're not a scientist, or you're a dumbass or whatever. And, I think we all know that the truth is quite opposite from that, okay? So, well, that's what we're going to be talking today about, but before we do that, let's go ahead and introduce the panel. And first up, as always, we have Jeran from Jeranism. How you doing, Jeran?
Bob, doing fantastic. Thanks. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Sounds good. Boy, you have really been putting out a lot of material lately. How do you do it?
Just keeping busy.
Yeah.
I stay busy. But no, it's been, I don't know if it's been that much more. I guess a little bit. We've been doing a lot of crypto stuff too, so it's been every day there's something. Not a lot of days off anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you do your
As Dave says,
consultations.
the flat earther. Yeah, as a flat earther, you're never bored, and that's definitely true. I don't remember what bored is like.
Yeah, exactly. And me personally, I like downtime. I love it when I can just absolutely do nothing, and just veg. But that's me. It kind of gets my head together.
If I had time to do that, I might do that. So
yeah,
maybe in the future.
Maybe you'll get rich and everything. And
not maybe, Bob. Maybe not maybe.
Yeah, that's right. Good attitude. Do not try. Do get rich.
Yes. No, I believe that. I talked to a lot of people about that. Too many people say the negative words, that I'll never have that happen, or that will never happen to me, or I'll never be that. And I do think you are introducing that into the universe. That is what you're proclaiming. And if that's the first thing that's said, or you're introducing that into the world. So try and talk in positive terms. And even if you say things like, I hope that I get this, but really I think what you're supposed to do is already consider it done. So I am rich, Bob.
Exactly. Yes. That's exactly what they say. Picture yourself in the situation you want to be in, like you're already there. Correct. And, I've been able to do that for a great majority of my life. And, it still amazes me how easy it is to let it slip away and, slip down into the dungeon again and go, oh man, everything's going wrong. The world sucks. But yeah, you're right. You got to keep it positive. And, when you do that and you make a conscious effort of doing that and you're paying attention, you're going to see that the universe responds to you. And there's no doubt about that.
Agree.
Yep. So it's a good thing. So, all right, cool. So next up we have Mr. Iru Landucci. How you doing down under today, Iru?
Very, very good. Hello, everyone. We start having a little bit of winter here in the outside part of the equator, but we are good. We are good. We have our mate. My mate is a hot drink, very nice, and
your mother? Wait, what do you say?
Mate?
No, my mate.
Oh,
mate is the drink that I take.
Mate.
It's a special drink. It's a special drink. Don't have a bad thinking about it. It's okay. Nice. It's legal. Okay, it's
good.
legal.
So is it like a latte, like a coffee latte, or just sounds similar?
No, it's completely different. It's like you take grass from the ground, you dry, and then you drink. In very short words, okay? It's not that. It's a very energetic type of herbs to drink. It's like a tea. You can see in that way.
You still drink ocean water?
Not yet, or not in the last 2 or 3 months, because I didn't feel that I need it. But I'm still having here in my house, with the chloride dioxide. I don't know how to pronounce very well, but I have those 2 drinks very close to me, and I try to bring with me anywhere I go. Luckily, seas or oceans, it's all over the place. But the other drink I need to prepare every time that I go to a new place. And Linda, it's a really great chef to produce chloride dioxide. So, but I take that as my first choice when I feel a little bad. Maybe head pain, or maybe stomach things, that type of stuff. I always drink that first before any type of pharmaceutical products.
All right, that sounds good. Well, yep. I
recommend everyone to take a look of those therapies. Yeah.
Yeah, it is amazing. It still never ceases to amaze me that they have literally taught us everything wrong. It's just like when Zack, came here and he started putting in the gardens and started growing potatoes, and, he has all these little secrets that allow the plants to grow really, really big. And, then you look at other channels that are talking about farming and stuff like that. And the things that they tell you to do only give you a yield of very small, ineffective, not very nutritive at vegetables. It's crazy. Just it's some of the most simple techniques. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more crazy now. In Australia, they are pushing a new law to stop. Let me use that word, to stop the regular people to grow their own foods. This was like 3 days ago that I read that article. It's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, they don't want you to grow your own food. And, like I said, even people that go to college and get a degree, a master's in agriculture or whatever, they are taught the things that are so wrong, that are absolutely counterintuitive, the wrong everything about growing stuff. And, consequently, their yields are sorry, and, then everybody's amazed when somebody comes out with a new organic, type of technique or anything like that. And, it's just amazing. It really is how they've turned everything around, and just whatever they can do to make life bad for us, that's what they do. So, it's pretty frustrating. All right. All right. I guess so. Oh, Austin. All right. Next up, we have Austin Whitsitt. How you doing today, Austin?
Doing good. I was a little under the weather for a couple of days, the genetically modified, not genetically modified, I guess, just the modified weather, but maybe that's why everyone's getting sick. It's the modification of the weather and the modification of their genes. Yeah.
We never know.
But I'm feeling better, man. I have just been chilling and meeting with a couple of attorneys behind the scenes, dealing with all this other stuff. Yeah, so we have a lot of big stuff in the works, man. It's all coming together and should be able to kind of inform everyone here soon. So that's about it.
All right. That sounds good. Well, I hope you feel better, because, yeah, I get that way too. And believe me, as you get older, it doesn't get any better. And, I don't know how much they spray there, but my God, they spray a lot here. Fortunately, we get, quite a bit of rain to counteract it. But, yeah, in some places, they just absolutely bombard those poor cities. And the people can smell it, taste it, makes everybody sick. And it's just crazy. So, and where you're down there in Florida, do they have a lot of chemtrailing?
Yeah, it's hit or miss. Sometimes it's really bad in certain areas, but we had to come all the way up to Maryland to register the RV. So, yeah, this place sucks. So I don't know. I'm not gonna say that because I got to Maryland I got sick, but it's pretty interesting. And there's noticeably more chemtrails usually here, but who knows? I'm not even interested in promoting the vibe to be scared of the sky or anything like that. I don't really get sick very often. I kind of feel sick the last few days, and it's all good. All you gotta do is drink water and maybe exercise and try and eat healthy. You definitely don't have to go inject random things into you and etc. So
yeah, that's true. Do you have a distiller?
We have a reverse osmosis machine like in the RV. I do have a distiller. It's in storage, but it just uses tons of power. So it's kind of inconvenient. But yeah, we get distilled water and then have reverse osmosis, etc.
Yeah, the reverse osmosis does fairly good. It doesn't remove as much fluoride as the other ones, but whatever. But yeah, we drink the distilled water. I think Jeran, David, and I all have the same machine. And yeah, obviously you do use a lot of power for them, but I think the water's a lot better in general. And it doesn't use anywhere near the amount of power that my John Ellis water machine uses, which is just ridiculous how much that thing uses. But the water, oh man, the water is so good out of it. It's unbelievable. So
yeah, it's just one of the cons of the RV, power usage is pretty critical, as opposed to a house. So, because I use that mega home distiller at my house all the time. Back in the day, it's awesome.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know. I haven't figured it out.
Cool. Okay. And also, guys, I just wanted to show you, I've been playing on the screen here. This video that I'm sorry, not David, but Flat Earth, Banjo, USA, Japan, and Brazil, Eddie put out, and he's reading passages from Enoch, and it's amazing. It's absolutely describing Antarctica, and it sounds very much like this is, like an access point to be able to get up, or maybe on top of the firmament. I don't know. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they don't want us to go down there. But yeah, even scripturally, and I wasn't aware of that. Were you?
No, it's out there, not down there.
Yeah, well, that's true. Out there in all directions. But yeah, pretty interesting that there's different, quotes. And it when you look at it, there's no other place that it can be that he's talking about. It's definitely Antarctica. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's very, it's when I started looking into all, not just all religions, but trying to compare all the religions. You have the equivalent to Enoch is Elias in the past. And then if you go back a little more, everything came to from summer. Summer, not the weather season. Summer from Sumeria, I don't know how to pronounce in English. And then the Babylons are the link between the Christians and the Jewish people to bring all the Genesis in the biblical book and the equivalent in the Torah. They take it from the higher priest from Babylon. The Babylon priest talk about all the stuff that you can read in Genesis. But if you go back with that, the Babylons bring that knowledge from the Akkadios, and the Akkadios bring that knowledge from the Sumer. And everything appears to start in that old culture. Sumer is like the first, at least, technological, religious and cultural people that bring a lot of knowledge. But it's really hard to track in time, because the Inquisition, remember that the Inquisition, one of the first things that they did was to, quote unquote, burn all the books trying to hide our history. And then they reread that history, and we have that connection with Fomenko, for example, and so it's really hard. And when you read this, it's so like generic, if you want to see in that way, and that is the magic behind those words, that you can adapt, to everything if you want. It's not something literally, it's in this type of poetry, and poetry is one of the best techniques to adapt to be preserved in time and space, because you can adapt to your time if you want it. It's just a little bit of imagination, and everything match when it's written in that way. And it's really hard to track the originals of our past civilization, right?
Yeah, absolutely true. Well, it's always rewritten according to somebody else's viewpoint. So, it is what it is. Go ahead.
Sort of random, but back on that other thing. Have you guys seen like using magnets to filter water? Have you ever heard of that?
To filter it?
Yeah.
No. Filter water, no.
No, I haven't heard of it filtering it. But I've heard that if you circulate water around magnets, that it will energize it to some degree. I don't know exactly how that happens.
Right, but that makes sense to me. Like realigning the water in a vortex, so like even moving it around. I can see how magnetism can help realign the molecular structure of water. But the idea of filtering the water itself is crazy to me. But someone, a verifiable source, is telling me that this is a real thing, and he plans on installing it in his new house. So I was just wondering if you had ever heard of it. I don't know much about it.
It almost sounds counterintuitive to me, because if you think about it, a magnet will pull out the minerals. So the minerals are the magnetic type of stuff. And that's really what you don't want to be losing out of the water necessarily. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to hear more about it.
Yeah, same. So I just random, my bad.
Yep. Interesting. Okay. Well, it's all about, things like that frequency and magnetism. And it is amazing, if you put magnets in with your plants and your garden, and you put them in certain positions and in certain areas of the magnetic field, what it will do to those plants. It's astounding how much bigger it can make them and tastier, and it really enhances the plants in a lot of ways. So who would have thunk it, right?
Yeah, but like it makes sense. Like no one understands magnetism because it's like the big key to everything, because technically everything is magnetic, and so that's like how birds fly. You can even put the magnet by the seed itself before you plant the seed, right? And you can use magnets to align the water that you put on the plant, and then you'll get a higher production, like higher yield. So it's all pretty interesting. I don't know about the filter the water thing, but in general, the whole secret is pretty clearly to hide what magnetism is. You know what I'm saying? It's like everything. It's like when I realized the idea that the Earth, when I first heard the idea the Earth is basically through the magnetic field, and you can see a magnetic field. It's very, intuitive and logical, and that's the whole secret. So I think that unlocks everything. I think that unlocks free energy. I mean it unlocks everything. So I think flat Earth should basically hone in as a unit on magnetism, because that's actually one of that's like the substantive lie,
Yeah.
really hold this down.
Well, it's heavily omitted, and in fact, it's been distorted because, they say that magnetism and electrostatics are two modes of the ether. And Ken Wheeler also says, so is gravity. But, in my mind, gravity is an electrostatic function. So you might as well just throw that out, right? And leave the word gravity the way it was meant to be. And, that would be, it means weight, right? So,
yeah.
So other than that,
actually, oh sorry, I mean, but just while you say that, so it's like gravitas, like heavy, how heavy something is, its weight, and that's all it means. So you agree that basically weight is intrinsically based on electrostatics, like how we have a relationship between the charge, the strength of the charge, and the different densities of things, which is compactness. So if you've had a more attractive force towards, like, say, the center of matter, it would make the molecules more compact. And we do have like a relationship between density and that. And if you look at the stories they tell about like mass spectrometry or whatever, they just get a quote unquote mass to charge ratio. It's all about charge differential and then certain areas. That's all it is. And there's a proportional relationship between that. So long story short, do you agree that basically the composition of the matter itself and the compactness of is all based on electrostatics? And so that is intrinsically what weight is?
100%. And here's why. Because one thing you find out when you're looking at the electrostatics and the so-called phenomenon of gravity is that, we've suspected for a while, and we've actually have some evidence that different elements actually do fall at different rates other than the 9.8 meters per second squared, right? And
exactly.
Ironically, and this was so straightforward, so in your face, I don't know how the hell any of us ever missed it. But if you look at the periodic table of elements, right, and you look at the number, the atomic number, well, what's number one? Hydrogen. What's number two? Helium, right? So, and what those numbers correspond to is overall charge potential. And so so it only makes sense that if you have this downward electrostatic bias that's pushing down, when you are only affecting, let's just say, one electron and one proton, right? If you want to subscribe to that model, regardless, let's just call it a low charge potential, then it's not going to have a lot of effect to it. So you'll find that those atomic numbers, there's a definite correlation between those numbers and the weight and the density and the way they're affected by the electrostatic field, right? So there's no doubt about it that this absolutely is what gives this thing we call weight its properties. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, exactly. I would go as far as to say it's actually the only viable framework or understanding at all. And electrostatics gives something its density. So when you say that it's a density relationship, it's like, yeah, of course. What is density, right? Like what
charge
gives
potential, really.
Exactly. And
Yes.
so it's objectively, everything is about electrostatics. Anything you invoke about downward acceleration, anything like that, right? And it's as simple as this. Like, you want to talk about weight. So you put, like, you know how you can use a Van de Graaff generator and you can make the, like, say, wood shavings float, right? Like, so if you put a pile of those on a scale and weighed it and then you made it float, how much does it weigh whenever it's flowing? Right. So that means you manipulate quote unquote weight with electrostatics. So this is an objective, empirical, repeatable, testable, physically demonstratable, right? It's like demonstrable. So this is the only viable framework. And for you to make all these crazy other claims without even acknowledging it is insane. It's insane, I think, for both sides. I mean, quote unquote globe side, quote unquote flat side. It's because we need to understand what we're thinking is not true. If you say density, then what is density? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's such a big deal. It's all simple. It's all very intuitive. Divinity is simplicity. It's all intrinsic charge and charge potential. And that gives us everything. The different manifestations of matter are all based on charge potential and the relationship of the molecules within that matter, right? And so it's like a 5-year-old could get it. It's not that it's complicated.
It is that simple. You know, Ken Wheeler says that all the time. Mother Nature is a very, very simple girl. And it's all based on pressure mediation, which the more you think about that, it's absolutely true. And not just pressure mediation, but the forces being used all appear to be push type forces, not pulling, but pushing. And, like I said, it's interesting that the first time I actually heard that was from Dell at Beyond the Imaginary Curve. He was completely going off on about that. And it took me a while to, contemplate it, what he was saying, but it ties right into what Ken Wheeler's saying about that. And the whole pressure mediation thing, which, it definitely is. It's all very much tied together. The connections are unmistakable. We can actually manipulate them with the variance of the electrostatic field, and also being able to isolate the electrostatic field. But there's some things you cannot isolate that from in an effective way, because we're literally swimming in it, right? We've got the Earth in a 100 volts per meter equipotential lines of force, electrostatic field that goes all the way up to 62 miles, right? So we're literally swimming in it.
Right. And they're like, okay, so if it's electrostatics and you can manipulate it and it can go faster down, right? Which is hilarious because they never would apply that same type of level of critique to the globe Earth paradigm, right? We're like, oh, so we can manipulate gravity, make things fall faster. Like it's just if you ever actually talk about something that's outside of the accepted view, we're going to be really hypercritical of it. But okay, whatever. So like we have a measurable 100 volt per meter potential going up from the surface of the Earth, and that's significantly stronger than the minute amount of charges you're changing, especially in a bigger compilation of matter, because it's going to take much more to affect it. Long story short, I could make you float, but I'd have to kill you to do it. Right. So if you have a magnet, because you're talking about downward acceleration, if I hold a magnet over like metal and drop it, is it going to drop faster than something that's not like a coherent magnet? Yes. Okay, so that's downward acceleration. That's, again, you take the matter, it's not a magnet, you introduce electricity effectively, right, a current, and then it realigns the molecular structure to all go the same way, thus make it coherent, and now it falls faster. Everything that can be proven shows you that the manipulation of charge is what gives you weight in every aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And another interesting phenomenon that demonstrates that, and this is kind of freaky. You can find YouTube videos about this, and I've heard stories about it myself. And that is that there's a lot of documented evidence that when there are lightning storms going on and you get a strike in close proximity to you, it will literally cause things to fly up in the air, which I thought about that. And it's like, well, that's pretty interesting. Why would it do that? And why is because it is literally overriding that local electrostatic field with the super high intensity one of a charge potential of the opposite polarity, right? That's why it's discharging. And when it discharges and comes down close to, normal matter here on the ground, it will pull things up into that electrostatic stream. And that's a fact, right? And I just find that really interesting that it behaves that way.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. When you get
oh, good.
I was gonna say, when you get into high voltage electricity, there's some weird shit that happens. There really is. And that's because we're literally messing with our medium that we live in. We're contained in the electrostatic medium. So
and the electrostatic medium is just this certain vibration of the whole spectrum that is what we call matter, like the material world, but really it's a portion of the overall medium, and that's all electricity is basically harnessing the field of energy that is the backgrounds, right? Like there's a field of energy, and that's why we can take like a corona motor and we can put the string in the air, and the higher we go, the faster the motor will turn, and that's out of thin air. And it's because there's a current here, right? So that's the physical, dare I say, almost negligible in certain ways, but very relevant and provable electric aspect of the world. I know that was kind of wordy, but so we can prove that. And then that's just pretty clearly to me, again, I would say it as it's the only viable framework that exists. And that is a portion of the vibration of the overall medium, and it gives us what we perceive as the material world. And that's why light is so perplexing to us, because it makes the imperceivable perceivable via illumination. All we're doing is manipulating the whole background, and we're just looking at little parts within it, and it's a field of energy, right? So we should have free energy then, right?
I'm certain that we do. In fact, I know we do. Look at some of the inventions we've covered on Globebusters. This was long before you were with us, Austin, but there's a guy that made a machine that literally could take a bank of 9-volt batteries and power up a water pump that ran on 443 phase, right? It was called the Joseph Newman machine. And, that was one of the most amazing stories ever. Congressmen were going to bat for him. Electrical engineers from all of the universities and TV stations were saying, yeah, this is the real deal. It really works. It really is free energy. On and on and on. It took him years to fight the patent office to get a patent, which he never did. And it came down to, ultimately, it was the director of the patent office just saying, nope, we're not going to do it. And they let it ride at that. So now he's a pretty bitter old man about it. And if you listen to him talk now, he sounds kind of loony, but that's what you get when you battle with them, that you're never going to win. And so, yeah, we've definitely had this type of free energy. And, like I said, in Denver, on more than one occasion, we witnessed aircraft that would fly over our house when we were out in the hot tub at about 100 feet above the ground, really close, and they were completely silent and then just disappear, right? So all of this is a product of either advanced locomotion or, free energy, probably both, and they don't want us to know about that. Because, of course, if they ever pull off the alien invasion card, they're going to need us to believe that, well, it must be aliens. Look at their flying saucers. Look at what they can do, right? So that, and of course, the oil companies wouldn't be making them richer, and on and on and on.
Yeah, of course. To pick your brain just a little further, like with the charge thing, what is charge? Would you agree that it's all based on vibration?
No, vibration would be more akin to frequency of charge, and frequency means to vary the charge potential. Like AC, supposedly you go from a positive 60 volts. If you look at a sine wave and graph it, you have the 0 point line, it goes up in a sine wave pattern up over the top. That represents a peak of 60 volts, goes back down to 0, and then goes below that to a peak of negative 60 volts, and then back up, right? So basically they call that alternating current, and frequency all works this way, right? So it's the frequency is what is actually determining that. And I'm sorry, I forgot the other half of the question. Can you say it again?
Well, it's just kind of like, is anything ever entirely still or at rest, like matter itself? Is there an intrinsic vibration in everything, or like there's a charge holding it together, but does it have like this resting resonance where it vibrates, even just very, very small amounts, or is actual literal rest attained with matter? Right, because I don't see it that way. I see that the matter has to be held together. It's basically like a metaphysical gluing process that's constantly going on, and then so like that's why you can make things levitate with sound, like acoustic levitation.
Yes,
I think that it's not that they're entirely synonymous. That would be too crude, but I would say it's very similar to, like, can you separate electrostatics from magnetism? Of course not. Like that's like looking at ice and saying it's not water, right? So I think it's kind of like that. Like they're intrinsically dependent on each other.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I don't think you have one without the other. Maybe is what I'm saying. Like I don't know how you could prove that.
They tell us that things are, when they get just like superconducting materials, you have to get those materials down to near absolute zero, right? Before they take on these superconducting characteristics, meaning they'll float, right? Float on something or whatever. But, you know, there's a video that I've shown before. I wish I had it queued up. I can't remember which one it was, but basically it's the one where they have a big coil that's kind of wrapped up like a table, and then they have a great big metal plate on the top of it. Guy flips on the power, it energizes the magnet, and it causes that thing to jump up in the air and float above it, right? That plate, and it also gets super duper hot, right? So apparently it doesn't really matter. But go ahead.
But you have to get it near zero, right? Like, can you actually attain zero is the question that I'm like really curious about. It's like, for me, I interpret it with my simple mind as like, if someone's about to go into the game and they're on this football sideline and they're like kind of, you know, moving around, like warming up a little bit, just kind of like moving around subtly, wanting to go in the game, because there's always that resting potential. Like it's always there. You can't get rid of it. And so there has to be some like little resonance that's ready to just bow, you know, amplify or turn into more energy. Like I don't know that you could have matter without that.
Yeah, I don't know. And of course, we don't have all those answers, but we do have sufficient evidence to say, in my opinion anyway, to say without reservation that you cannot have something from nothing. I mean, I think the Big Bang, if you believe in the Big Bang, maybe you believe that, right? But we know the Big Bang is nonsense, and they're saying that nothing created everything, and that's nonsense. There has to be something there that is the material for this. Now, as far as being able to get things to absolute zero, I don't know. They tell us theoretically they can do that, but I don't know if that's actually true or not. But it's what is it?
Well, it has a resting potential, right? It has a resting potential. Everything like has electrostatic resting potential. So it's like, does that mean stationary? I don't know. I mean, I agree. I'm asking a crazy question overall within our current paradigm of knowledge that we have to discuss this, but I think it goes all the way back to like Hermetic principles. I think that everything is frequency and vibration, and like there's no such thing as zero. There's no such thing as nothing, right? And it's just so small. It's like, how negligible can you attain?
Yeah, exactly.
But,
yeah, I would say, yeah, there's no such thing as, well, no, I don't think anything can get to zero either. And I certainly don't think anything can be less than zero. And that is one of those variables that they will insert into physics when describing something mathematically, right? Either a zero null set variable or an infinite variable, neither of which exist in any way, shape, or form, right? But that's how they do that. That's how they create their mathematical world. So again, I tend to think that the better way to pursue these investigations is through classical physics methodologies. I think quantum mechanics is nonsense. It has some interesting premise to it, but overall, it doesn't pan out, at least not for me. I know there are people in the community that do believe in it. I'm just not one of them. And, you know, for several reasons, but we're not going to talk about that today. But I think classical physics did a really good job for us all the way up until it was basically booted by Einstein. And now here we are, you know, we have really cool iPhones and stuff like that, but really technologically, we are no further off as far as actually creating new innovations than we were 100 years ago. It's just gotten faster and smaller and more miniaturized. But the theory has always been there, and it remains the same. So, I don't know.
And to say, if you're going to test this idea that everything's intrinsically like vibrational, then you can think of things like where sonic welding, where they like excite metals with like very high frequencies, sonic welding. And then there's like the idea, can you like disintegrate matter basically? And there is evidence to suggest that effectively you can disintegrate molecules
absolutely
with frequency. Right. And so it's like, dude, what is matter, bro? It's clearly a certain frequency. It's a certain vibration frequency that when altered in a certain way, you can actually remove the material nature of something.
That's right.
And that's pretty crazy.
Look at it this way. You're familiar with Royal Raymond Rife, right? The Rife machines?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I've got a Rife machine. It's great, you know, all this neat stuff, but all it really is a signal generator, or a machine that generates different frequencies, multiple frequencies at multiple different amplitudes, et cetera, right? Which can be programmed. And so Royal Rife's approach to curing things like, you know, eradicating the body of harmful substance or disease or viruses or whatever it is, even if it's not alive, all of it, regardless, has an electromagnetic frequency and signature. So what the Rife machine was intended to do was to target things like, you know, bad virus. Let's just say, I hate to use this because viruses are, you know, well, you know, let's just say it's a virus, right? But it has a frequency. And so what you do is you match that frequency and then you crank the amplitude up on it. And it, because of the fact that you have matched the frequency, you have caused a condition called resonance, right? Where the matter and the energy coming into it are the one and the same, right? They are the same vibratory rate and the same waveform shape, okay? And when you do that and you bring up the amplitude, what it will do is it will literally cause that virus or whatever to disintegrate, or germ or whatever, okay? So it's just like the premise of the opera singer and the wine glass, right? They hit that note, which is resonant to the frequency and form of that crystal wine glass, and boom, it shatters it totally. So yeah, is it? Yeah, but it is. It's frequency. It absolutely is. And you know, so you look at it, and then you look at water, right? When you look at water, you can modulate anything into water patterns, which is amazing. Same type of story. And I don't know, it just always comes back to this vibration of frequency and matter and waveform, which brings something, and that something is one of the categories of the luminiferous ether, into physical form. Okay? Now, can I tell you exactly how that happens? No, I can't. Because if I could say, I could like invent something that could just beam something into existence, right? Which I can't do that, and neither can anybody else. But nevertheless, because of the fact, all the things we know about it, that it's directly affected to frequency, waveform, and amplitude, that has to be what is happening. It really does. I mean, there's no other logical conclusion.
I agree. And like, so invoking density or matter without acknowledging it is ignorant. If we're being blunt, like it's ignorant. And this is it sounds complicated because we've been so deceived, but without all the like misinterpretation of terms. I think it's called aphasia, like suffering from the misunderstanding and misapplication of words. And that's what plagues today's society, you know. And they've done that with like magnetic attraction, for example. When magnets don't attract, they accelerate to this area between them because they have a field, and it pushes all the pressure out of the way and makes them go meet in the middle of that area. They go to that area. So it's like all these words hold us down, and overall, it's not that complicated. It's if you can disintegrate molecules based on frequency manipulation, if you can levitate things with frequency manipulation, if you can alter charge with frequency manipulation, if those are intrinsic and in everything, and you can manipulate what you basically get from whatever is there that we can't see with frequency manipulation. For one, to say that you couldn't do the opposite would be unfounded. It's not that we don't have to create matter out of ether, if you will. Like, we can disintegrate matter with frequency and vibration. And where does it go? And so what is this little, there's clearly an interchange, like an exchange between the material and the metaphysical all the time. And so it's all intertwined, and that's all it is. And it's all vibration. And it sounds woo-woo. That's how good they've lied to us. This is like, I've thought about this a lot. This is the only scientifically viable option. It's not, you can ignore the question. You know, it's just like with the ether. It's as simple as, okay, you can ignore the question, but either you're saying that nothing is there or something's there. If you want to ignore the question, you can, but it's, you see what I'm saying? I think that we've been tricked into kind of not addressing the big things. And I think this sounds deep and philosophical and stuff, but no, it's physical reality. Everything is
simple.
vibration.
It's simple.
Yes.
It really is. I mean, look at this. Look at what we're looking at right now. Look at this stuff. And this is done through nothing more than frequency and amplitude modulation, right? In other words, like when Tesla said that all form is created by modulating the ether with sound. Now, sound is a little misleading because when I think of sound, I think of something like 20 to 20,000 hertz or 30 to 30,000 hertz, whatever it is our auditory sound waves are. But he just simply meant vibration. That's what he meant by sound, because a lot of these vibrations for almost everything is far beyond our ability to hear it, right? Whatever is oscillating it. Some things we can, some things we can't. But we don't need to necessarily hear it because we can replicate it and we can prove it by doing experiments like this. This is just using little metal shavings, or you can use like Lyco powder, or you can use water. Water is amazing what you can do with that. And that's one of the reasons why water is said to have such a fantastic memory, because it is so malleable. You can literally make any and all of the platonic solids in it and any variation of it, and it remembers it, which is astounding, right? So again,
That's crazy.
you know, and as far as being able to destroy it or create it, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but like I said, what I do know is that you don't create stuff out of nothing. There's got to be something there. And that is what we call the luminiferous ether, this background substance. And can we prove it's there? Absolutely. I proved it was there in behind the curve, right? What were we measuring? We were measuring a rotation, but we know it's not the Earth, right? And also, it doesn't have to be in a curvilinear path to be able to measure it. You can measure that same ether in a linear path, right? That's what Michelson-Morley was. It was a linear interferometer that, you know, like I said, one of the more basic applications of it would be for calibrating instruments for precision measurements, i.e., measurements of distance and length that are accurate down to less than a hair's width, right? Way less. So, yeah, it's all there. It's proof. We have names for it. And it's interesting because when you do manipulate the ether, it kind of comes into the world in a kind of having like liquid properties, right? Like water properties. God, I'm losing my voice. So yeah, I mean, and that's exactly what we're doing is we're vibrating it. So you can say, well, how are you going to get some of that ether out and show it to me? Well, I can't. But there's enough empirical evidence. There's enough evidence that shows that we are able to manipulate something and something is going on there, that it's not unreasonable to add that to our preponderance and say that whatever this stuff is, we're going to call it ether. And this is what we know about the ether. And what we know about the ether is actually getting to be more and more and more. And it's really interesting when you tie this in with the study of cymatics. That really is a peek into the inside world of creation and how things manifest. And I truly believe it.
Maybe that's why fasting, maybe it elevates the vibration, and at a higher vibration, your body begins to disintegrate the toxicity or the matter that has what people call mass, right? Like mass tumors, like based on the toxicity and that frequency, a higher vibration, like fasting will do it as well, right? And so maybe like everything just makes sense. Like the same thing with terrain theory, like the movie Terrain. I guess I haven't seen all of it, but I was talking to someone about it with Kaufman, and the idea that she would think about the light pole looking at the picture, and then the water would freeze with that type of design where you could clearly see a light pole and the wires and everything. And it's the idea that that's why what we think and believe and our intentions are so important, because we have a lot of water in our body. Like water is a crucial component of our body, and we can change the molecular structure of it, and that can result in whatever type of element. So I think those two things combined are really interesting, and it just is more, it's like more on top of the fact that it's all about vibration. Like it's a simple thing, right? So like you could be 7 years old and someone explains to you everything is vibration, and at certain different vibrations, like let's say we're lower on this graph here, or this spectrum we draw out, we're lower in the physical world that we can touch, and it goes much higher. You can't see when it's much higher.
That's right. We can't see. We only see a very, very limited amount of the electromagnetic spectrum, and we hear even less, right? And our touches, between all the frequencies that touch occupies, feeling, sight, sound, smell, all those frequencies are but a fraction of the virtually infinite spectrum of frequencies. And the higher you go in frequency, the more complex and the more energetic things become. And we know this is absolutely true because we can demonstrate this on a scale over and over and over again. So, the frequency is a scalable type of thing. And people will say, well, as we ascend, or if we feel good, then we are vibrating at a higher frequency, which means that we are in more of a condition of resonance, and we put out better energy, right?
Yeah, and it stands to reason everything in the sky has these same rules that apply to them. And then, like, for example, it ties in NASA just misdirects, and they're like, so NASA released an audio recording of a black hole. And the new sonification, which was released as part of NASA's Black Hole Week this year, is essentially a translation of astronomical data scaled up 57 or 58 octaves above their true pitch, so it can be heard by humans. But just to say that what it is, everything that's going on in the sky or in quote unquote space, that's all based on frequency and vibration, because everything is. You know what I'm saying? And so
right.
they're out there and seeing things, and we don't understand that everything's about the vibration, and so we've been misled.
Right. And the area that we're really in the dark about is what is the connection between consciousness and intention, and being able to manifest, things out of the ether, vibrate things, stuff like that. That's really where we're lost in space. And that would be really amazing to, understand more about that. What we do know about it is that the stronger your intention is to do things, or to have something done, or visualize that you're already there and it is done, it happens. It does manifest into reality. How that happens beats the hell out of me, but it does happen. And there's a billion people that will tell you that they've had experiences that verify that 100%, right? So again, there's that combination again, but this time it's our consciousness controlling that. And how it does that, I don't know, but it does.
What you're saying is reminding me of Tesla's tower and how he wanted to use that for communication purposes all the way across the world by sending radio communications way up high where the ether is, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's right there. It's harmonizing.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I mean, the ether is everywhere. I mean, you can't avoid the ether. We naively thought we could, shield the ether from going into whatever was happening with the fiber optic gyro that was reading our 15 degree. But it's like, you cannot isolate this background energy that creates reality as we know it. That was a stupid thought, but hey, at least we were trying stuff, right?
Yeah, but that's what people like to ask you now, right? It's like, what about the ether? It's like, bro, like bottle up the ether type thing. It's like, dude, you don't even understand what ether is then. And that's just a term. I use the word
just
background.
bottle everything.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's like we know that there's a container on the earth. Something that's now we've never been to the container. We never chipped a piece of it off. We don't know what it is. We don't know where it is. We don't know all the characteristics of it. We don't know exactly how it works, but we know it's there. How do we know it's there? Because of an antecedent relationship. We have gas pressure, so we have to have containment. That's what gas pressure is. Okay, so same thing. We have propagation of light, sound waves, you name it, and propagation requires a medium. By way of antecedent relationship, say it's the same exact thing. I've never been to the magical place of just ether. I've never bottled it up. I can't tell you exactly how every single part of it works. I can't describe it in entirety, but nevertheless, it's based on like a necessity just with antecedent relationship, right? So it's like
kind of backwards engineering it, right? That's kind of how it works. You understand some basic principles, and then you try to figure it out from the outside in instead of inside out. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
take the analogy a little.
Thinking of that which I don't understand doesn't trump that which I do understand, and so we build principles based off of what we do understand, and those things totally point at this ether and the firmament.
Right. So just to drive this home, this analogy a little further. So whenever we bring up the gas pressure and someone's like, well, what about the gas pressure gradient? And we're like, bro, you have to have gas pressure to have a gradient. That's a characteristic of the gas pressure. We're talking about the antecedent to have the gas pressure, or in this case, let's say propagation, right? Same thing. And so you're like, oh, I can explain the gas pressure gradient pretty well. It's very easy. A ton of gas comes from underneath the earth. Like we have an electric gradient on the earth. Gas is being produced at the surface level of the earth constantly. And gas is coming up again from underneath the earth. And if you take a container, you can replicate that. If you introduce gas to the surface constantly, there will be a concentration of gas down at the bottom of the container, obviously, and there will be a gradient going up to the top of the container. So we can replicate it, and it's an electric current, and weather patterns affected as well, temperature fluctuations, and these all combined together, all the variables give us our pressure gradient. I don't have to answer any of that, though. I don't have to explain any of that, right? Because it's just the antecedent. When you bring up, well, what about gas pressure? That's a red herring fallacy, right? It's a non sequitur. It's like, what about delta X, change in X? We're talking about X. How do you have X to have a change in it? And so that's the same thing with ether. They were like, Bob and I could sit here and talk forever about different things about the ether. Like it's a substance fluid, like field of energy background. Light is just the illumination of the background due to the excitation of the medium, et cetera, et cetera. But we don't have to do that. Just objectively, the only viable framework is that there is a medium there. And so if we could at least take that step as a community, and maybe a lot of people tap out there and they're like, I'm not willing to go any further into speculation, that's cool. But they need to acknowledge the elephant in the room, basically. And it's the only viable way.
Exactly. And that's why I find it funny that so many channels will sit there and argue that, well, a container's the necessary antecedent for pressure, right? And yet, when flat earthers are asked, then what is that container? What's containing it? They don't want to say the firmament. They don't want to say anything like that. But it's like, why not? There's a lot of evidence for it, and it's absolutely mandatory. Otherwise, we would be blown out into space, right? So yeah, it's really stupid. that, you know, you can have something that's staring you right in the face that is so obvious, that is that golden piece that says, look, this must be there because nothing could work unless it is, right? So
I've heard of these mythical flat earthers you're talking about, but I've never actually met anyone who doesn't believe in the firmament. Not any in the flat earth community anyway.
well, yeah, well, exactly. Well, I think the people that will not talk about the firmament don't want to be in a position to have to defend it. But like I said, you don't have to know everything about it. We have so much information on it, right? I mean, oh my God, you know, how many shows have I done talking about the characteristics on it? And it's so much more plausible than when you look at the layers of the atmosphere and all this stupid shit that happens in the atmosphere. It's like, why? Why would there be an ionosphere all of a sudden, you know, out there 50, 60 miles? Why would that happen? Why would there be a temperature change from, you know, negative numbers into 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit out in the middle of space for no reason, right? And yet there are absolute bifurcations, there's absolute divisions in the characteristics, so they tell us, of these layers of the atmosphere. But none of that makes any sense.
To conduct electricity, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You have to have matter
You
to
need
conduct
matter
electricity.
to conduct electricity, and yet they point at the ionosphere and they say that the matter in the ionosphere is super, super sparse. It's so sparse it's practically considered outer space. It's beyond, it's out past it's called the Kármán line, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 62 miles.
The line that, yeah. And so they say that the ionosphere is up there, and that's what the ISS is floating through, and that's what they're claiming. And yet the matter out there is so sparse. What's conducting all that electricity?
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing, because, you know, they're saying they came up with that excuse that the ISS survives in that area of the thermosphere, which is supposed to be 4,500 degrees because of the scarcity of air molecules, right? It's like, okay, great. I can get on board with that. But the problem is that doesn't explain the radiant energy, the rest of the other side of that equation. That ISS and the inside of it should be an absolute oven, right? And it's not. And that's just one of many problems with it. So none of that makes any sense. And again, it's just the NASA, you know, constantly contradicting themselves show all the time. But look at this, look at this pattern
about
here.
the solar winds, supposedly, right? The solar winds that can be destroy the satellites, but the ISS, they never pick up a solar wind.
Yeah, exactly. And now,
I mean,
you saw that they actually want, let me go back on this. Look at this, guys. Doesn't that look like a spine? That's amazing. Just frequencies.
It looks like a centipede or something.
Or a centipede or whatever. It's just absolutely amazing, just vibrating matter. But
that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just like a spine that's crazy. Dude, you heard with the ISS while it's coming up that they say that they've decided that they're going to fully destroy the ISS, and they're not going to keep any parts of it to put in any museums or anything. They're fully destroying the whole thing. They announced that a few days ago.
Oh, well, it doesn't surprise me. They probably have some other. They probably have some other story in mind for it. Who knows what?
Before they had this,
to the ocean, but not try to retrieve the parts is like the official story. They're just going to let it be entirely destroyed. And I'm just saying, like, yeah, of course, right? But how convenient that we don't get to see this magical hardware.
Before they made up the ISS, they had something called the Skylab. And when that thing blew up, with whatever firework they did, they actually started selling cans of Skylab repellent as a big joke, and people were just making a total mockery of it. And when I learned about that, I just bust out laughing. I thought it was just super hilarious. And so when they claim that the ISS gets blown up or whatever, yeah, I'm going to be out there, burn, baby, burn.
Yeah. Of course, nobody's ever going to see that unless they project a hologram up there. By the way, Jeran, I was watching the 24/7 channel which I do a lot. I don't know why, because I've seen every video about 10,000 times. But and guys, the 24/7 channel is fantastic because of all the wonderful videos, the best of the best that are on there that you can watch. But one of the videos that's on there is Jeran and Missa were out one morning, early in the morning, and Jeran was trying to hit the ISS with his laser, right? And it was a totally clear morning. Of course, the ISS feed of Earth as it went over California and the whole country for that matter was entirely cloud covered, right? So, you know, that's one way to know it's phony right there. But beyond that, you guys made a comment that I think it was you, Jeran, that said it just kind of looks like it's darting to the left and to the right. And when you look at it, that's exactly what it looks like. And so what that tells me is what we're seeing there is not a physical object. It is a projection coming from the ground up. And you may not have a fine enough stepper motor necessarily to keep a perfectly straight path line of that light as it propagates. So therefore it will kind of have a tendency to jump, right? Do you understand what I'm saying, Jeran? Hello? $4.12? Huh.
I think he was to the bathroom.
Well, I don't know how I do that. Anyway, that is what happened, is that it was just darting, darting to the left and darting to the right. It looked totally unnatural. There's no way that the space station was doing that. But when you're dealing with a light, a laser, and you have to make the stepper motor in fine enough increments to go left or right or any other direction, because of the fact it's digital and not analog, you're going to see it kind of do that, right? Because the next step over, when you get up to 62 miles up in the air, well, there's going to be a noticeable jump to it. And that's exactly what he was seeing and he had pictures of, right? So that's what the ISS is. And of course, I thought that for a while. I thought for a while also that the ISS was a U-2 spy plane that was dressed out with bright LEDs on the bottom of it. But I'm pretty convinced now, especially after seeing the artificial stars, that, it's a projection on the sodium layer at 62 miles, the bottom of the firmament. Crazy, huh?
Well, if you put like a stencil on top of the lens of the laser, maybe you can project like a Batman sign in the sky, but in the soil layer.
Well,
probably.
The hard part for me is understanding the shadow of it. I don't know how to project a shadow up there except for beaming a whole bunch of light all the way around it, kind of like a spotlight, like the Batman signal. You get the shadow by doing the light around it, and then it's the inverse of the light. And so exactly how you do that with the ISS, I don't really know. So I think that's my hang up.
You use an open stencil instead of
closed
stencil.
You actually just spelled out exactly how you do it, Kyle.
That you can add transparencies on the stencil. You have a lot of a lot of techniques.
Yep.
I can tell you because I am a designer and I use that type of transparent printing. So you can do whatever you want. You can add colors, you can add textures,
Yep. So basically it's the lack of light that will give you your darks, your shadows, right? So it's kind of an inverse.
Try that out on my ceiling. Do that on a flashlight and say, hey, look, I got the ISS going across my living room ceiling.
Yep. Are you back yet, Jeran?
Well, you can use slides, in the old type of PowerPoint, the real PowerPoint in real life was this, transparent paper with color, with everything. You can do a presentation, put in a transparent film on top of the light, and you project colors, textures, drawings, typographies, whatever you want, and you're gonna have. It's like a computer image, but with a little of transparency on it, but you can do the same stuff that you project on the screen of the monitor computer, but on the wall or some type of solid layer. Not
Anyone
solid
wants to
in
make a
terms
video
of
on that? That's
material
viral.
layer.
Yep. So, Jeran, you're back, yes?
I'm here. Sorry.
Okay, so do you remember the morning that you and Missa went out to shoot your laser at the ISS?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you were making the comment that it looked strange because it appeared to be darting to the left and to the right.
It still does that. Yeah.
Yes, and you're right, it does do that. And the reason it does that is because the, whatever's projecting it doesn't have a fine enough stepper motor, if you will, on the laser to make it not do that. In other words, it's kind of like if you took and you drew a line on your computer screen, like a diagonal line. It's not really a diagonal line when you zoom in on it, right? It just has one straight
Little
line.
steps.
Yeah, it steps up, right? And that's exactly what you were seeing there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what made me realize at that point, when I watched that on the 24/7 channel, it's like, that's got to be what it is. The ISS has got to be a projection onto the sodium layer, just like they do the artificial stars. And that's, one of the big telltale signs of that is unless you have an absolute analog, a perfect analog way of moving that laser, you're going to see it do this digital jump, right? Or darting, as you called it.
Yeah, and if anybody goes out and watches it, if you just really keep your eye on it, you'll notice that it darts and then kind of slows up and then darts and kind of slows up. And it almost looks like an optical illusion because you're like, well, that shouldn't be doing that. But I'm sure there's another explanation besides optical illusion.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm pretty sure that's probably it. But that occurred to me the other day, so I thought I'd bring that up. Because a lot of people, when I did my presentation on the ISS and how we shouldn't be able to see it because the sun angles are wrong, the distance and time it can be seen is equivalent to being able to see it all the way across the United States. If you see it for, I don't know, what is it? 8 minutes or 10 minutes, something like that.
Usually 8 to 10.
Yeah. Or a little bit more than that, then you are literally at 5 miles a second, you're literally getting into the 2,400 mile zone, or the entire distance across the country. Right. And it's like, there's no way that you can do that. And we know that that's what's happening. It's got to be a local based projection. And so again, that's what it is they're projecting. There's obviously multiple different stations that are projecting on the sky locally. And that's why if I'm on one side of the city and somebody else is on the other side of the city, we can both be looking at it and see the same thing. And, a minute later, it should be well over 1,000 miles away. We should never be able to see it, but we still do. And now what they've done is they fired up the lights, somewhere to the east of us. And other people are able to see it, right? So I'm pretty sure that's how that's being done. But anyway, we're kind of digressing here. So, all right, so let's get back to the original point, and that was about this. So what I wanted to bring up was EwarAnon started talking about his assertions about the Tartarian Empire and how the architecture all seemed to have come from the same place, the technology, etc. And, like I said, when he included the ether in that, in its physical form, I had a problem with it, right? So let me play what he said. And like I said, on the one hand, congratulations, kudos for being able to admit you're wrong and withdraw it, because it sucks to have to do that. I've had to do it a few times and, kind of leave that behind. But be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I think part of what you're looking at is still very viable. So let me play this part real quick and we'll discuss it.
Resemblance and smaller isolated connections. Many aspects of these structures, their geometry and form, resemble patterns of electromagnetic energy, and there are instances, primarily linguistic, that hint at a connection between architecture and energy production. It is now time, however, to try and evidence this claim, otherwise the argument will be classified as pareidolia, the tendency for perception to impose a meaningful interpretation on a nebulous stimulus, usually visual, so that one sees an object, pattern, or meaning where there is none. And I made a terrible mistake. If I was playing chess with the official narrative, I sacrificed my queen a few moves into the game. I reiterated an argument that others before me made, that ether played a primary role in the relationship between architecture and energy without a single piece of sufficient evidence to back it up. How could I have been so stupid? I had spent so many hours debating with the heliocentric supporters in my life about the shape of the Earth, and my arguments would always come back to the requirement for them to provide sufficient evidence and demonstration of curvature, of gravity acting on water in such a way. And they never could, but I could demonstrate through many means a complete absence of curvature. And yet I go and rush in and talk about ether as if I had just activated Salisbury Cathedral's spire. Silly lad, you lost your queen before the game had really begun. The concept of ether is about as elusive and problematic as the concept of gravity. And I'm not saying ether doesn't exist, and civilizations in our history did not understand or harness it. On the contrary, I believe it does exist, but believing is not evidencing. I would have done much better to lead with something like plasma, but even then, I still cannot provide sufficient evidence of any piece of architecture working with plasma.
Okay, so basically he's saying that he cannot make any connection between the existence of ether and anything that is manifest in physicality, okay? And again, yeah, you may not be able to modulate the ether in such a way that, you know, things will just kind of pop out of nowhere, right? But, you know, that's far beyond our technological prowess. But I tend to think that if someone understood the mechanism of how to induce this energy into the ether, what was that? If someone understood how to induce the energy and the correct frequency patterns into the ether, that not only could they get it to take, you know, the form, but, you know, and I don't know how it stays permanently either, right? But he's also saying that there's nothing that evidences it even when it's already here. And again, if you look at some of these cathedrals, and what's amazing is a lot of them they built to be very resonant to these large pipe organs that they put inside of them, right? And Eric Dollard has a video out where he's talking about this one church that was designed, you know, very much with the platonic solids in mind, right? In the Sophageo scale. And he says that when you sit in that church, especially in one particular place, the sound just cuts through you like nothing you've ever felt or heard before, right? It literally is vibrating your body to what you're hearing. You're hearing it and you're also feeling it, right? So the reason that that is so amplified is because the structure of the church itself, the way that it's built, is because that energy is resonating within it. It's like a tuned cavity circuit, if anybody knows what that is, right? So a tuned cavity is kind of like something where you can have a cavity in like a bottle, and you can change the dimensions both vertically and horizontally, and there will be certain frequencies that when you tune it around, you'll get a higher output of energy, right? That's when it hits the condition of resonance. Okay, so that in and of itself is absolute proof between what we're calling sound, or, you know, Nikola Tesla called it sound, but it's really much more than that. But basically inducing frequencies into the luminiferous ether, and that's typically done magnetically, right? That's why we can modulate magnets. We can actually modulate that electromagnetic field, and it will manifest itself in a maximum energy transfer, and it will do some very interesting things in a tuned cavity, most of which are a product of a higher energy output. And I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people, but I'm going to try and simplify it even more through some examples later on. But, to say that there is no real connection between the physicality and the energy, I think is a huge mistake to say it. Yeah, we call it the ether, and we may not be able to snap our fingers and have it just jump right into action and take the form we want it to, but we can emulate it. And we can emulate it in such a way that we're seeing exactly how things must be, right? Because remember, we were talking about the platonic solids. Every single one of the platonic solids can be created by the generation of the solfeggio scale frequencies, right? Using them in chord form or individually or harmonically. And the more complex the waveform becomes, meaning the more frequencies that are used in it, the more you will see the physicality that manifests out of them become more and more complex, right? So if you look at a structure that's got, like we're seeing on the screen right now, this church and all that stuff, that, if you were to look at that in its resonance through the energy, like through an oscilloscope and a spectrum analyzer, it would have a super interesting energy pattern that would look very much like it looks in the physical, in the energy, like in the oscilloscope portrayal of it. Okay. And when I say that, let me give you another example of how that works. There is a guy named Dr. Len Horowitz that was doing a thing on the Hebrew language, which I thought was really super interesting. And one of the things that he discovered is that when you enunciate the individual letters in the alphabet in Hebrew, aleph, bet, etc., all that, when it is enunciated properly, and if you're speaking like into a microphone, and then that microphone had like an oscilloscope on it that would let you see the waveform of what you're saying, that the written characters of the aleph, bet, and tau, or whatever all the Hebrew letters are, literally show up on the oscilloscope. Now that's freaking mind-boggling, right? How in the hell did they even think of that it would ever do that? But, this is going back to an ancient primordial language, which of course is very resonant, I think is probably one of the best languages overall. And that's why, a lot of us don't know it, but it's just amazing, right? So you literally have a direct match of form and sound, in the Hebrew alphabet. And I can only imagine how many other things are like that. In fact, I can only imagine that everything would have to be that way. What do you guys think?
Hebrew is available on Duolingo. You can learn it for free. It's pretty easy. And so I've actually been studying that one myself on Duolingo. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. Well, Stan Tenen was really good. He has a lot of interesting thing about Hebrew, and the other thing that's cool about Hebrew is you can make a primary form inside of a little apparatus, right? And then you can put like a covering over the top of it, and he calls it the light inside the meeting tent, right? And so basically it's got a candle on the inside, and then it has this little Spyro looking figure that's in there. And then as you rotate the overall little tent apparatus itself and look at it from different angles, it also gives you the Hebrew alphabet in fire. It's like, holy,
that is wild.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. Oh,
I want to see that, man.
Stan Tenen. The guy's name is Stan Tenen.
Give me the link of that presentation, please.
Mm-hmm. I will. I'll put that up. Stan Tenen is the guy's name. And then the guy that took that work even further is a guy named Dan Winter. Okay. I'm sure you guys have heard of Dan Winter, but man, when you look at stuff like that, and what Dr. Len Horowitz discovered about it. So now we have sound, language taking physical form on oscilloscopes, taking physical form in shadows. It's like, wow. It's really quite mind-blowing. And of course, there's another guy, Nigel somebody, who does a lot of music and then matches it to cymatics, and that in and of itself is quite interesting. I would play you some, but unfortunately I know I'll get copyrighted for it because I've done it before. But everything physical has its energetic match in the ether. It just does. And there's more and more evidence for that every single day. So that's why I'm saying to EwarAnon, let's not be so quick to discount your ideas about this architecture of physical form and the idea that it may be part of a large energy collection system by virtue of resonance in physical form. Because I think that's exactly what's happening. I really do. And
yeah, seeing the cathode on the floor, I thought was just mind-boggling when I looked into this myself. And you can't deny that. And this is supposed to be like way before like the industrial age, and yet a cathode on the floor, seriously? It just, the ancients knew far more about technology than people give them credit for.
Yep. And here we are in our little Earth inside of a capacitor, literally in between two Gaussian surfaces, which are charged with a very high voltage, 10 million volts specifically as the reference voltage. And then it's being modulated somehow, right? It's being modulated somehow. And I'm sure that modulation is coming from oscillations that are unseen, out of our detection range in a lot of areas, because we don't have the equipment to go up to frequencies in 10 to the 24th type hertz, or maybe even lower, 10 to the negative 24th or whatever. But literally the spectrum is from beyond, just barely above DC, to where you only make one oscillation maybe in 100,000 years or longer, to you make a googolplex oscillations in less than 1/10 of a second. All of that is called a vibration, and we simply do not have the technology to replicate those types of things. And I think that if we did, boy, would we be able to produce some really interesting things as far as being able to manifest stuff right out of the ether. And again, I acknowledge that's pure speculation, but all of the evidence below that and above that seems to prove that that's how it works, right? So don't throw it out, EwarAnon. Don't throw it out. Just work with it, and tell people what it is. It is a piece of evidence. It is, and you're building a preponderance of evidence, because there's no way you're just going to be able to explain everything. It's taken me forever to bring forth this idea of the downward electrostatic bias, to the point where a lot of people now really do understand it, right? And that is because it takes a while, because we are so brainwashed to the opposite, to not think that way, that we're incapable of it, point blank. But now we see that, yeah, that really does have a lot to do with it. And, Ken Wheeler's right about this stuff. It's all different modalities of the hysteresis, or the signal that's being input into the luminiferous ether. That's what brings forth reality. And I don't think it's wrong to talk about it that way. And I think that our investigation should continue along those lines. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's a really nice topic. I also like to see this type of constructions in the cultural way. I mean, this is also based on, remember, we have some distinguished periods of,
In fact,
I don't
there
know
is a
how
lot.
to.
Sorry.
I don't know how to pronounce in English the Baroque style, the Romantic style, things like that. And it was a time where the constructors, remember, cathedrals came from Vatican and Masons, and they are really well understood the creation. Remember all the crusades, all the knowledge that they bring with from the Middle East, things like that. So they're trying to apply the cosmos order in terms of the great design based on the creator to their buildings, to, you know, keep this idea of you know, create something that live forever because it's in synchronization with the creator design. So if you start take a look from the nature, of course, and you are a idealist or you are this type of guys who have the knowledge and trying to reach the maximum, you know, the maximum knowledge from the creator. You are trying to understand nature because you understand that in nature there is a DNA came from the creator, and you want to translate that to your own project. So of course for me it's all related because it's already there. You bring designs from nature, you're going to transfer into your solid buildings, your materialistic world based on that type of DNA came from the nature, came from the creator. And something that I trying to understand or trying to find is that if we still have those buildings rise, you know, where is the equipment to make that work in that sense of you know, collect energy from the ether? I'm not saying energy from the people, because all those buildings, it's also to say, hey guys, God, take the the conversation here in this building, because with that huge type of architectural structure, you are, you know, also trying to print a message to the people that you want to control, and trying to keep the narrative and saying this is the type of place where God came every Sunday to talk with you guys. But beside that, where is the how can you again start the mechanism or the energy collector or things like that, because we still have the building in the complete form. So what is left? It's left like a transformer or some type of
it's
equipment.
not complete. It's not
what
complete,
it is
though, Eru.
exactly.
It's
What?
not complete. It's clear that these buildings have been stripped because they're otherwise, you know, they've got lots of huge wastes of space, right? And that doesn't make any sense.
For me, the space is not a waste. Is to bring this type of symbolic space. Is the space of bring things giant, because you need to present like a giant how you say like a giant story, you know, like this is a big place because God is super big and he walks in, and you know, it's not like a human size. So you need to bring this idea too. I cannot leave that. I'm sorry, because I cannot explain. I study architectural history in my college, and I cannot bring, you know, exactly my words in English, but there is also like a condiment of cultural thing in the build constructions. It's not just all based on simply, you know, trying to bring energy into a temple in the materialistic way. It's also a really high symbology in the buildings. If
That's
you
true.
build things small, nobody's going to believe you that you talk with God. You know?
Yeah, I get that. And also the other thing that could be also, Eru, is, you know, the Bible talks about there were giants in those days. Great. I don't doubt that. I have a feeling that humans or humanoids at some point, not even that long ago in history, were much bigger, maybe hundreds of feet tall, right? Type of things. And in fact, some of the pictures that are out there are really interesting, showing guys that are like 12, 13 feet tall, you know, standing with other humans. And it was a very, very common thing. Well, this is the bloodline of the Nephilim, right? The sons of man, where they came down and found the human females comely and had children with them. And then these were the offspring. And then maybe at that point, they're the guys that were really calling the shots in the world because of their physical size. They could destroy us easily. And maybe all this stuff is an homage for them to be able to, enter those buildings or whatever. But it does seem that they would have been built to accommodate for, these large people, right? Or it could be, like you're saying, it's like they're paying reverence to the incredible power of God and the majesty of God. So,
well, the problem that I have is, like, for example, if you type in Google the La Plata Cathedral construction, we have a really huge cathedral here in my own city. Remember that my city was built by Masons and Jesuits. And the grandfather of my historian teacher participate in the construction of that cathedral. And there is the same type of construction, and inside is really amazing. And we have pictures from the early, that is the cathedral that I have here 10 blocks from me right now. And if you go to old picture, you can see the actual guys who did it. And in fact, the grandfather of my teacher participate in that construction. So this cathedral, for example, was built from the first stone to the last stone by humans, but regular humans with knowledge came from Masons. And that is something that you need to have in mind, because all the cathedral or all the temples in Europe, not all in the sense of that word, but a lot of these type of temples was built using the knowledge that these people has. So right now, maybe you just type construction, and maybe if you type the word in Spanish, which is without the letter T, just with at the end of the, let me just.
Do you want to share your screen and do it?
Okay, I can do it. It's going to be very quick. It's going to be very, very quick. Let me just share the screen. I just like to, not discuss, but construcción de plata. Because I talk with my teacher, and there you have, like a lot of the process, a lot of the people working on the cathedral. You have, for example, if you go here to the actual Storia Museum, you have all the picture, all the name of all these people that work. And I live in a really, really small city, so every surname from the people that work in this type of things and other things, they are still alive, the family roots, so everybody knows everybody. And we in fact, in my own time when I was born, we have a huge problem with the cathedral, because the terrain starts sink based on the weight of the cathedral. So they need to stop the construction very, very in the middle of the 20th century and wait until we have a better technology to support the base of the cathedral, because if not, everything's going to go to the ground and destroy it. So, I mean, again, if you take a look of this cathedral, is one of the biggest in the world. And this is, when you enter, you have the same type of knowledge based on the sound frequencies, the sound resonation, because
we're not seeing any pictures other than something that I don't think you're meaning to show.
Okay, let me share again. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. I sorry guys. Now you are seeing.
There we go.
Okay. I was showing this. This is the guys participating in this construction. You have pictures all over the place, because at this time we have photograph. This is not drawings. This is our actual pictures of that moment. You have in the high super resolution, because we have these all type of things in the museum. So what I'm trying to say very quickly is that this is the same type of design that you can find in Europe, of course, because we being conquered by Europeans, Jesuit and Mason. And if you go inside the cathedral, you have the same type of big spaces, you have the frequency. Remember that the guy who trying to convince you about the narrative, the official narrative, it's a guy like you and me with 180 meters tall, but he need to speak and resonance the voice as he was like a god, or semi-god. So all these type of things you need to have in mind, because there is a purpose in the design. Of course, using a lot of knowledge that we as a normal people didn't have, or that doesn't have. But I am not by the complete history, like, okay, this was made by old antiquity civilization and we take it and build on top. And for me, it's not it's not so easy as that. We are capable to do a lot of things, but those knowledge are secret knowledge from the regular people, and that is more important to me, trying to get back, of course. But it's my opinion. I am not saying that the history of Tartaria is not real. Of course, I believe in some part of the Tartarian's story, but I want to share this study case because I live here and I see this, how it was built from the ground.
Yeah.
Just that.
Well, that's and that's exactly how EwarAnon kind of came across his mistake. Was he was, I think it was Liverpool. He went through and he found this book, and it was showing the early photographs of things being constructed, and it showed everything. It showed the masons. It showed the gigantic steam-powered cutting plants, right? That were huge, absolutely enormous. I mean, and you're thinking about, and supposedly it was also done in the early 19th century or early 20th century, and so. Here it was looking at him in the face, and it was pretty much like he'd seen in all these other structures. Of course, there's still a lot of stuff that I don't buy. Like, for example, the stuff they put up at the World's Fairs that was extremely complex architecture, and then they just, tore it down off the World's Fair. I don't think so. And then what's going on with all of the, the cities that were empty and didn't appear to have anybody in them. Right? All that doesn't make sense either. So again, we are so lost because they have hidden everything from us. And I don't think that it was ever really his intention to, lead us down the wrong path. And like I said, he was called out his own mistake, and, kind of corrected it. So I congratulate him for that, but I still think that there's more to the story. Absolutely. And I know Martin Liedtke does. Martin was quite excited about, the archaeological dig place that he was at. So I'm really interested in hearing what he found there. So
remind me again, Tartaria is the missing 2,000 years theory that after Christ, there's been an extra 2,000 years. And so all of our data is wrong kind of a theory, or is the Tartaria thing, the whole pre-Adamite, the pre-Adamite story?
Well, Tartaria was supposedly this area that occupied a great deal of Russia and China, and it was a civilization that basically set the precedent for a lot of the architecture that we see today. And what's interesting about it is when they first started talking about it, I mean, I'm sure everybody was just like me and like, what the hell is Tartaria? What is that? Never heard of that, right? And, then all of a sudden, all this information comes out being attributed to this society and this culture. And it's like, why have we never heard about this in our history books? And, and if it is a scam and it's, just being planted as false information, what exactly would the purpose of that be? Now, I don't know, because, I can't read their mind. I do know that they obfuscate and confuse a lot, but maybe that was done to lead us away from something else we were getting too close to. I don't know. I really don't. But It just seems like every time you're really close to something, here comes the propaganda. It's just like when we were able to photograph what we were calling the second sun, right? With Chris Van Maytre's solar filter, and we could only bring it into manifestation by using a polarizer. And it's like, okay, that's interesting, and that's certainly not natural. And we get the, then we get the response from, Wolfie 6020, who's their, top hitman guy, trying to say that we didn't know how to use the little dial on the bottom that stopped the ghost imaging from happening. That wasn't it at all. In fact, that had been completely removed out of the picture initially. But you could then physically move the telescope, see the second sun, and then put a polarizer in front of it and make it disappear. Now that right there is the thing that says it's got to be real, because no manifestation, no aberration will respond to a filter like that. So I don't know. But anyway,
it'd be interesting to do some extended studies on that topic right there, and say, just to kind of keep track of it throughout the day. And so we've got some very small select studies on that, but does it always follow like right next to the sun? What does it look like over the course of 24 hours?
Well,
like,
it shows up.
That'd be really fascinating.
Yeah. It shows up. Oh, you stopped sharing. Okay. Right. It shows up in different places. And that's kind of interesting. Let me kick my share back over to this. Hang on a second.
Yeah, I stopped sharing because it was boring.
Boring.
We don't have so many pictures. We don't have so many different pictures from the construction.
Yeah,
it's all the same pictures.
Okay. Oh, okay. So no, it would show up in different spots. Kyle. In fact, it showed up in a different spot just between my house and Karen B's house, which was kind of interesting. But that could have been either because it was geographically located in a different place, or it could be because the time of day. I'm not sure, but Chris is still kind of running more tests on that. But there's the second sun has been talked about in history, a lot. And even some modern day astronomers, the astronomer from SLU, said point blank, there is a third sun up there, but NASA doesn't like you to know stuff like that. So, they try and keep it a secret. And
I was just looking at the Aztec picture of the firmament recently, and how it's got three bodies up there. It's got the sun, the moon, and then there's this other third body that mainstream media doesn't know anything about. And so what is that thing?
Right.
So
it appears to be the source, and then somehow it's projecting up into the firmament to a focal point in the firmament to produce what we see as the sun and possibly even the moon. Right. So, but again, that's just, my God, we are just so lied to. It's unbelievable. All right.
I think it's interesting just how the Aztecs knew about this stuff. And like I was looking at just their picture. I've got to pull it up here so you can see it. But you can see the ice wall in the picture of the Aztec depiction of the firmament and the flat Earth. And how did they know about the ice wall? Well, there's so much evidence for ancient world travelers that they just knew so much more than mainstream media gives them credit for. Oh, they all want you to think they're just total idiots and archaic and cavemen, and it's nothing but the truth.
Yep, ain't it the truth? So, all right, cool. Well, anyway, so that's what I wanted to say about that. I think that, I'll be the first to admit we cannot snap our fingers and manifest, everything there's to know about it. But I think that there is certainly enough evidence to come to a decent, informed conclusion that it's real, at least in my opinion. So one of the things that EwarAnon says is, well, I'm never going to go back down that road again. And I think that's a mistake. We need to absolutely pursue it under that paradigm and keep looking at it and all the evidence to it. I mean, evidence comes out all the time about it. There's an article, where is it? Is this video stuff right here? And this is kind of interesting. Flat Earth Tests came out with it, and it's a little video that's talking about the GPS systems engineering docs show Sagnac effect is not caused by the Earth rotation. Well, we already knew that, right? But this was actually a study done by other scientists. And again, what is it being caused by? It's being caused by the rotation of the ether, right? So more and more and more, we keep getting all this evidence for it to show that it's there. And eventually, you know, we should be able to produce something that will allow us to influence it, the ether itself, to make something manifest. And I think eventually that will happen. I also think that it's probably already happened by some of the inventors that have been able to see outside of the box. So, you know. All right, so let's pass on that. Oh, go ahead.
Just looking at the picture, I sent it in the chat if you want to pull it up, you can. But you see all this swirly stuff in the sky around the three bodies, and I think that's pretty interesting to look at. And it's like, is that supposed to be the ether? I don't know.
Is it this? NASA says it has a huge announcement.
No, that was something shared by Jeran.
Oh, this.
That's really funny, though. I read that yesterday in my show. It's one of the better articles ever written about NASA, but unfortunately, it's a joke.
Okay. All right, let me... Oh, damn it. Let me exit out of full screen. Chat. Okay, now what is this again, Kyle?
This is the Aztec picture or Aztec cosmology, and so you see the firmament way up on the top, and then you see the picture of the sun over there on your right. Then there's the moon over here on your left, and then right there in the center, there's that third body. It's just as significant as the sun and moon there. It's just as big as them, and so that's your third body, your third sun. And then you look at all
but
this
that's not just the third sun. It's also related with the creator. It's the eye of the creator in the, for example, in the Christian symbology with the triangle and the eye in the center. I mean, I am not discredit what you say, but there is also the idea of the, you know, this deity in the top of the sky, you know, bringing all the.
Yeah. I see that. But you see heads on each of these three bodies. Okay, you see a head on the moon, you see a head on the sun, and there's this third body which is just a really big head. And so when it comes to lunar eclipses, that was the whole Rahu and Ketu thing. Kihu, I don't remember how it's pronounced, and in the Hinduism, where they said that this third body comes and eats the moon, and that's kind of what I see here. And so I think there's a huge connection right there with the Hinduism. But as you look in the back of the picture, you also see the giant ice wall. And I always thought that stood out really strong to me and was really fascinating. And then as you see this kind of swirly stuff in the air, I'm not really sure what that's supposed to represent. You can see some stars up beyond that if you zoom in, but yeah, my best guess is that the swirly stuff is the ether. I don't know what else it would be.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, it's entirely possible. Entirely possible. And then there's this thing, which we had, I've actually shown this a couple times. Let me grab it here. Where is it? There you are. And this is, of course, is the Freemason guy that is drawing the sphere, right? And basically the CD looking, this is a dielectric inertial plane. Then he'll draw the sun and the moon up here and the black sun down here. And, you know, again, this is depicted and talked about in a lot of different cultures. that it's there. And it makes sense because I don't think that the sun is physically traveling around in a circle above us. And I don't think the moon is either, to be honest with you. But I think what's happening with the sun is that it's just being manipulated onto a focal point that is then changing the focal point to a different point in our sky and having it manifest and appear like it's physically traveling around linearly in the sky.
Is there flat earthers that still think it's physically traveling? I don't think so, because it can't be triangulated at all. Right? I mean, a physical item should be able to be triangulated.
You would think.
Is this a combination of like the hollow earth theory mixed with the flat earth theory here? I'm kind of confused at this.
Well, not necessarily, Jeran, and here's why. Because that would be like saying that you could be in a swimming pool and be underwater and look outside the pool up, like to something outside the pool.
Oh, like a light.
And try and triangulate. Well, the light is there, but your triangulation is going to come out all wrong.
Yeah, true. I guess I just have always looked at it as some sort of projection because the fact that it's you have a personal relationship with the sun. So it's, dependent on each person. So I guess I just didn't look at it as a physical item going around. I figured it must be some sort of reflection or, like you said, focal point.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a physical item either. I think it is a focal point, definitely. And that's why when you get the sunspots and you zoom in on them, you look inside of it and you see nothing. Nothing's there. Because it is a focal point, not a physical object. Makes sense to me anyway.
I trying to find a video maybe before the shows end. I can show you a recreation of a focal point here on the ground, and it's amazing because it resembles very, very nice like our sun.
And I thought somebody
I share.
Yeah, somebody worded it. I don't know if it was David Weiss or somebody, but just a really good representation or mental construct is to think of how we used to burn ants as kids with a magnifying glass. And then we'd have to get that point, right? That little light point as small as possible. And that's how you get the fire to start. And if you lift that up, let's say you've got that point really tight and you lift it up in the air, does the point go away? No, the point just goes up in the air. And so kind of think of the sun as that same thing. It's the point from the magnifying glass as you lift it up. That's not actually anything there. It's just the focused point of that light.
Yeah. We actually had a piece of video like that too. That when we were in Dallas during the conference, we went over to Chris Pontius's shop, and we were looking at these things that he was making that were like Cami's little toys, the little parabolic toys.
And so that was not me. It was somebody on the recording.
Oh.
Somebody press play.
Oh, okay. All right. So anyway, so we're looking at this thing, and Chris had this light on the wall, and then he would hold up this kind of parabolic dish that was, chrome mirrored on the inside. And it was so cool because you could see the light and the stuff on the wall behind it, except it was being projected out in front of the parabola, right? And we were all just completely freaking out over that. And I absolutely believe that's what is happening with the sun. So there's a focal point that it's hitting on the parabola, aka the firmament, that is hitting back and producing a focal point where then we get our apparent position of the sun. And then that is further distorted by the atmosphere, of course, a little bit. But yeah, that was cool. Okay, and did you find your video, Ira?
No, it's really hard because I was I need to look into some Instagram's account, so that is why I said if I find it, I share immediately. But I don't want to lose the time, trying to show the process of me finding the video.
Okay.
I'm looking at your video in the background here of this hollow Earth, flat Earth thing, and I don't quite understand it. The black sun in the center, all of a sudden, that area that's supposed to be really cold it should be really hot in my eyes, but I don't know. So,
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't understand it all either, and I think it's a little bit incomplete. But like I said, if you ever play with one of these things, and the little toy is called a miroscope, and Cami's got a bunch of them. She plays with them all the time, and it is absolutely trippy what you can do with them. You know.
I saw her hologram thing with the. Yeah, I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, but the crazy thing about it is not only does it bring up beautiful holograms, but it seems to translate temperature also, which kind of tells you that, well, if it can do that with cold and do that with image, then it should be able to project something that looks like a sun that is actually radiating heat.
So
right?
Why would there ever be any kind of winter like up around Alaska? I don't understand that part.
Well, because it's physically further away.
From the hole in the center?
The point where it is the focal point, yes. In other words, it would be lower on the top side of the parabola, which would make it further away from anything in the north center, right? And then during the summertime, and this is what's weird about the heliocentric model. In a heliocentric model, at summertime, the sun is, supposedly where we know it is. In the flat Earth wintertime, they're totally opposite from each other.
Yeah, it just leaves me with a lot of questions on how all of this would work, such as the sun and moon even appearing closer together and why you don't see one giant ring all the way around. There's just so many questions. If the sun and moon are both emanating from this black sun underneath the Earth.
Well, the Book of Enoch talks about specific gateways that the sun passes through. And I think those gateways they could be kind of like waypoints that change the projection angle of the apparent sun location. I don't know. I mean, but it's not described the way that we're seeing it by what he's doing. There's something else that's involved in this. And, when he's talking about it passing through certain gateways or doorways or whatever, I don't think we know exactly what that means.
Okay. Yeah.
I find it.
Typically how I see it is there's many different layers in the firmament as I understand it. And that causes the light to get refracted in different ways. And so it's just another way of looking at that, I guess. And so I can see it through that way.
Yep. Okay, and here I will share with you.
Okay, give me 1 second. Of course, this is a really, really, easy demonstration. We are not saying that this is exactly as it is in the sky, but at least you have something to trying to get a picture in your mind, because this is. Let me just share it with audio because it is in English. So maybe.
Is that burning the air?
Well, not burning, but in order to show the focal length, you need a more dense medium. Of course, we have the atmosphere, but also who knows what it is really up. I am not claiming that we have a solid firmament or things like that, but in order to see the light, you need something to project, right? And in this case, he used this small lens in comparison with our atmosphere, of course, and he brings some smoke to make more solid type of atmosphere. And
this is a giant lens, and I am using fog to illustrate how the sunlight is focused to a point. All the energy that hits this lens funnels into that spot. So when I put a rock under it, it is rather amazing. You can see how the rock is being etched and then melts from a different angle. And as I take the light off, you can see the rock is molten and turns to obsidian.
That is amazing right there. I love it.
That's
you want
all
free energy. That's what you got to do. And I don't know why people don't tap into that more often. I guess it's not as, the power companies don't want you making all this money off of this stuff like that. But if we could kind of harness stuff like that in an affordable way, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, that's just one of those Fresnel lenses from a large projection big screen TV. And yeah, they're dangerous. They'll hurt you too if you get underneath them in the wrong spot. But yeah, and also remember, guys, that before all this weird stuff really started happening after 2012, the chemtrails became a thing, right? And at the time, you could look up chemtrails and look up barium and strontium and aluminum, and what came up was a medium, an ideal transmission medium for holograms, right? So this could be, you know, they were probably planning ahead. Well, we're going to need to project an ISS flying over the top of us. We're going to need to project UFOs, you know, in certain places and have the military chase it, something that looks real. We're going to need to, you know, create all of these things holographically. And so here it's been, what, 20 years? And they're still spraying. They're still spraying like there's no tomorrow. And what we're seeing is we're seeing a huge increase, uptick, ever since this started happening, and it keeps getting more and more so that way, of things manifesting in the sky that don't appear to be there, that don't appear like they should be there, right? And in fact, like I said, you know, said before, I submit that these are holograms, and that's why when they are being projected, one of the telltale giveaways that they are a projection is the fact that because you're projecting them so far away, 69 miles in this particular case, or up to that anyway, that you could see something that appears like, instead of a smooth transition from one point in space to another, it would kind of dart that way, right? Because it takes a digital jump and it's not a smooth analog progression. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
yes.
I see that.
Okay. So, I mean, all of this stuff is tied together, and I really still think that, you know, someday they're going to hit us with this phony alien invasion, and, you know, they're going to need that, and they'll probably be pulling out their laser weapons that basically they're burning down a lot of the states. You know, you've seen them. We've all seen them. These entire areas will go up in fire, and the only thing that's burned are the houses and the structures, and the foliage is left completely intact. That's impossible.
We saw that in California. We saw that in California. They've got these cars that are just being incinerated, you know, and then there's a big tree like 2 feet away from it practically. And it's just like, how are they incinerating heat right here, but, you know, just a few feet away from there? Oh yeah, that tree's totally fine. And, you know, all these other plants, totally fine. It's just laser precision.
Yep. And we saw it back as far as 2001, right? Remember within several blocks radius of the World Trade Centers, what were we seeing? We were seeing cars that were literally freaking melted. And they were nowhere near the fire, but something sure torched those things. Right? So I think they were using
I didn't see
that
with the World Trade Center thing.
Oh my God.
That's news to me. Yeah.
Oh my God. No. There's a lot of people. No phone calls right now, guys. Let's see. Yeah, no, there's tons of footage on it, pictures where they're showing cars that are, you know, blocks and blocks away, and they are absolutely incinerated. It's unbelievable. So
that's one more for the big book of just 9/11 things to know. If you want to make a good documentary, you know, that's, people love to talk about 9/11, but not enough gets said about things like that.
Exactly.
All of the things that, you know, just all of the problems.
And you know what's funny is, you know, at the time that happened, Dr. Judy Wood came out with this book. I think it was called What Happened to the Towers or something like that. But in the book, she posited these high energy, not space-based, but, well, it could have been theoretically, it could have been calling it space-based, but high energy weapons that appeared to have started a lot of these fires, right? And she actually had a lot of evidence. Of course, then at that point, everybody was saying, well, if you believe that, you're a shill and you're an idiot and all that stuff. And yet it appears that she was right? Especially when you look at the cars and how they were incinerated, and especially when you look at what happened in California, when the structures are being burnt to the ground and the trees not 25 feet away from these structures are completely intact, right? That's impossible. We know that. That's absolutely impossible. And then shortly after that, she completely changed her tune and said, well, no, I didn't really mean to say that was happening. Like these high energy weapons that were burning things up. And when in fact, that's exactly what she was talking about. And then she turned around and basically denied herself. Somebody got to her, something like that. So anyway, so somebody in the chat keeps asking me about the Artemis missions. Have any of you been following the Artemis missions at all?
The whole go back to the moon.
Yes, it's still on the ground.
Still going nowhere. Because I honestly haven't followed it. I thought Artemis was
the moon. That's the moon one.
That is the moon shot?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Still not going anywhere. I didn't think so. And it never will. And if it does, it's going to be a studio production, because guys, they can't go to the moon. They can't get anywhere near it. And anything that you see is going to be an absolute CGI manifestation. And, depending on what their next generation of CGI generating technology is going to be, it may look pretty real. Hard to say.
Yeah, I hear that one all the time. Oh yeah, when they go back to the moon, they'll show you. It's like, you think they're going to do a better job with that than they currently do with the ISS? If the ISS isn't convincing me right now, what makes you think people, a new set? What makes you think a new set is going to convince me?
Yeah.
Same actors.
Exactly.
New set.
Yep. So yeah, it's crazy.
The next season will convince you for sure.
All right, cool. So, all right, let's see if I have anything else here. What was this, Jeran? This who gives a shit? NASA says it's a huge announcement to make about Neptune.
Oh, no, I just sent it to Ewer. I thought Ewer would think it was funny. It's a funny article that says, hey, NASA, nothing you do matters. You're a bunch of nerds. You're a bunch of space punks. We don't like space. We think everything you do is stupid. It's just a good article, but it's a joke, or joke site. But whoever wrote it, I'd hire him to write more articles about NASA, because they seriously get it. But it's funny that you talked about Artemis and nobody knows. I think there was a question on Jeopardy the other night that everybody missed. It was simply like, what is it called? What is the manned mission to the moon called now? And nobody got it.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about space.
Yeah, they've been talking about it, about, well, we're going to develop all this new technology for it. But as far as a launch date, and I think they even had a launch with it, right? But it obviously was not manned. Or maybe I'm off on that. I don't know. But it's not going anywhere.
I'm still just loving the fact of just how many people I was able to talk to when I went to the college recently and just asked them, what does Mars have to do with the role of the government? And people are like, it has nothing to do with the role of government. And so I didn't have to tell any kind of fakery whatsoever. They just agreed with me. Yeah, we should abolish NASA. And so it's unconstitutional. And I was like, yeah. And so it was just so easy to do that with just people when I just asked that question. What does that have to do with the role of government? You're right. Wow. It's just so easy.
Yep. So you guys see what I have on the screen here? This is us at Chris Pontius's house. And this is so cool. Look at this thing. It's just a parabola. And this light is behind on this wall right behind Cami right here. And look at it. It sticks out there. It looks like right there is just a focal point from a clear reflector. Isn't that amazing? We were all completely tripping on that.
Wow, and it's in the air, right?
Yeah, it's in the air. You can walk around it. You can get in between it. Everything. And it is absolutely, you swear to God, it's just hanging there in the air.
Well, that's where Buzz and Neil went. They went and landed on that thing in the air. Maybe not. Maybe they didn't go at all. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Maybe you can't go there.
Isn't that crazy? God, that is just absolutely. Of course, when Cami saw that, she went nuts because, you know, all the parabola toys and holographic generating things. And again, remember the guys, if the firmament is like a vaulted type area, that means that it would be like two of these together, and then the center section would be where the stars and the all that stuff would be rotating around on it, you know, being projected into an apparent position, just like what we're seeing here.
I remember seeing this kind of example done in a fish tank with the Science Museum over there in North Carolina. I think DITRH was there, Carly Sunshine, and a bunch of other people. It was some old footage I found a long time ago. But they're just looking at the reflection in the light and say, oh, yeah, that's a star right there. And we could see a reflection on the right side. We could see a reflection on the left side. We could see it like way on across the tank. And so we could see it all the way around us, like multiple reflections. And I thought that was really fascinating. Yeah. Kind of like what you're seeing here, but it wasn't just one star, but you're seeing like four. But it's the same reflection, just on different sides of the tank.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. So there's a lot of nifty things about optics that we don't understand. And I think a lot of that is what's going on in our sky. See the star on the wall? That's the source right there. That's where it's coming from. Unbelievable. So, yeah, just something else to keep in mind. You know, when people don't tend to want to think outside of the box to explain things like this because, well, largely a lot of people don't know about stuff like this, or, you know, optical little tricks like this, or, you know, anything like that, let alone our own perception, right? We barely understand our own perception of things, our, you know, how we perceive things optically. Obviously, they don't teach us that. They never teach us about perspective unless you're in art school. So, yeah. So it's no wonder really that people are incapable of thinking outside the box, because they've never been exposed to anything else to say, well, what if it's something like this over here, like what Chris Pontius is doing, right? Well, if they've never seen anything like this, and this, you know, then as far as they're concerned, it doesn't exist, and it may as well be magic. And I really think that our construct here is a lot simpler than people think it is. I think it's just understanding a lot of things that we've never been exposed to, just like Schlerin optics. You guys familiar with Schlerin optics? That's hard to say.
Yes.
That's freaking amazing. The way you can see air currents, what appear to be currents, of various things, gases, wind, etc. It makes the invisible visible. And unless you know that that's possible, or know a way to make those manifest, then again, it might as well just be magic to you, right? And you're going to go back to the only thing you know in explaining things, and that's the same old rhetoric that they taught you in school, that we were all indoctrinated with. And since there's nothing else that you're aware of, so far as you know, well, that must be the correct answer then. And that right there is the problem that most of society is experiencing. They just have never had their mind expanded like that, or seen what is possible. And that is quite by design, right? Without a doubt.
I can show you that fish tank example if I could share screen here real quick.
Sure, go ahead.
All right. Entire screen. Come on, push share. There we go. All right, let me know if you can see this.
We got it.
Okay, cool. So here he's got his, this is David Weiss over here with the phone, and he's going to rotate this phone. He's going clockwise here, but you look on the other side, it's going counterclockwise. And so you're over here thinking, oh, wow, that kind of resembles some stars here that I can think of.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another amazing thing, that people can't wrap their head around that. simple concept. And,
So
you know,
this is a circular fish tank here, and you can see it all the way across you, but then there's another reflection over here on the right. If you look around, it's kind of hard to see it right here, but yeah. But if it'll show up later, but you can count multiple times seeing this reflection in different spots in the fish tank. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. That's neat. Very cool.
Trying to.
Was this at his house or something? Or
They went to a museum. I think it was like after a Flatoberfest or something. I'm not really sure.
Oh, that's right.
I found this on. So this is you can see two reflections right here. There's one on the front and then one in the back, and then here's another one on the side and the right. You can see it. And that's moving around as well. Yeah. So that was on Carly Sunshine's channel. That I found that one, and I featured her in the top 10 female flat earth channels. I need to do another one. And I've done that. It's been a while.
That's cool. All right. Well, guys, I don't have anything else. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to share. So may do so. If not, we can think about closing it up. Anything you guys have you want to show?
I have something, but I don't know if if you want me to present. It's based on long distance range observation, and it's like something that we have here in between Argentina and Uruguay, and how Wikipedia changed the conclusion of that observation. But if you want to, I can present next Sunday. You decide.
Okay. Well, I don't mind. You guys have a preference?
No, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. Go for it, Jeran.
Okay. Let me just rearrange my computer monitor. Give me. Okay. Here we have. All right. And give me 1 sec.
Okay.
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 No worries.
Because I was just doing other stuff, and I need to arrange a little bit the information. 1 second.
Bob, people have been asking me about the experiment we talked about 2 weeks ago with the possible plane with the gyro. Remember that?
Yes, in fact, I wrote up an email to a guy last night.
Oh, good.
Who said he wanted to donate like $500 to it. And let me actually pull it up.
Yeah, somebody was asking me if we were going to do a GoFundMe or something to get it going.
Yeah. Oh, and also I still have to send the GoFundMe or whatever up to do Sean's, yeah, which I'll do that probably today. Something like that. Get that thing up and running so we can get that built. And then Sean will have a wonderful computer. We had a gentleman donate an incredible video card for him. It's like $5,000 or $6,000 just for the stupid card. It's unbelievable, but it'll sure render like a big dog. So let me see. Let me look at my sense stuff. All right. So I'm going to kind of read you the part of it, what we want to do, that I wrote to him, and see how it sounds to you, because I think this will work really well. Okay, so he wanted to know, what the gist of the experiments would be. And I said, there are a few experiments involving gyros and airplanes we are considering, but the one I would really like to do would be as follows. We rent an aircraft somewhere very close to the equator. An airport on the equator would be ideal, but not mandatory. We will need a few cameras capable of recording at least 4 hours of video, and have each camera trained on the azimuth and elevation gyros, while a third camera is pointed at the azimuth and elevation navigational gyros in the cockpit. Right, so we'd be monitoring our apparatus that we would build out of 2 gyros mounted on a board, one to register elevation or up-down motion, and one to register azimuth, okay? Then we say we get 2 precision gyroscopes with optional gimbal kits similar to the one I have. You guys have all seen that. It's the high-end gyro kit with gimbals. Then we attach the starting mobile to each gyro assembly opposite the battery pack for it, which will act as a counterweight. Of course, John Savage did this, and it worked beautifully, especially when we put it on a 24-hour device so we could prove that it would pick up 15 degrees per hour. Okay, and then I said we take that assembly, mount it in the aircraft, turn on the gyros, and verify the azimuth measuring gyro is leveled and calibrated to lock on to the east-west directions. Okay, then we calibrate the elevation measuring gyro to be level on the ground, which should be perfectly level or perfectly parallel with the ground. We take off in the airplane and we climb to the flight elevation, which we are assigned, and then turn either east or west when we arrive perfectly over the equator. We fly on our heading for about 2 hours, which should be enough to register about 4 degrees of drift on the gyro, monitoring the elevation angle. And the reason for that is that would be measuring the curvature, right? The z-axis. And remember, our gyros will not have any Schuler tuning or anything like that on them. They're just gyros. But I'm saying they're
unpendulated.
I'm sorry?
Unpendulated.
They won't be
supposed to. Yeah.
Right. They don't have any pendulum. They're not pendulous gyros. The pendulous vanes. They don't have that. So, okay. So, where was I? So anyway, 2 hours, we should be able to go about 280 miles, something like that, which should probably give us about 4 degrees of drift, right? Which is enough to absolutely register. And then I lost my place here.
Be nice to have like multiple unpendulated gyros, and that way we can tell for sure that we can kind of outrule any kind of technical problems that it might be having.
Right. Okay, so now on a globe, if you're flying on the equator and hold your heading precisely over the equator, none of the gyros should drift at all, right? On a globe, if we're on a globe, none of them should drift. Of course, the flat Earth, the one that's going to drift, absolutely is going to be, when you're going over the equator, is going to be the azimuth one positively, because we'll have to constantly be turning towards the North Pole, right? All right. Now, if we are on a flat Earth, then maintaining our heading of the equator will mandate a slight turn commensurate with 1 degree over 69 miles, and all gyros should register that. As far as the gyros monitoring the elevation profile, they should all display a drift of 1 degree per 69 miles, or a total of about 4 degrees over the 2-hour flight. At the end of the first 2-hour segment, we turn the aircraft around and do it all again in the opposite direction for the 2-hour ride back. This will give us a redundancy going in 2 different directions. And like I said, guys, if we're on a flat Earth, then the only gyro that's going to show any drift over the equator would be the azimuth one, because on a flat Earth, the equator goes around in a circle, and you have to keep turning it around that magnet in the center because it's with reference to that magnet. So the azimuth gyro is going to show a drift. Now, if it's a globe, it will not show a drift, because on a globe, you don't have to make any turns. Just your flight around the Earth itself, going absolutely dead reckoning straight, will tell the tale, and there won't be any drift. As far as elevation profile, if we're on a globe, then we're going to see a drift in the gyros showing a change in pitch. Okay. attitude of the air, pitch attitude of the aircraft. If we are on a flat Earth, then we're not going to show any change of pitch, right? And again, I'm monitoring R2 gyros, which are monitoring azimuth and elevation, and also monitoring the internal cockpit navigation, because people are saying, well, they have stuff in there that's compensating for that. I say that's bullshit and not true. So this test alone will give us conclusive proof of whether or not it's flat or a ball. And it's just flying over the equator for a couple hours in each direction.
Does it even have to be the equator? Like, couldn't you just go in a straight line in any direction? And
well, no, it has to be the equator, because that's what's going to differentiate. Because on a globe, you would still have to make a turn, right? So if I did it at 39 degrees north, I still have to turn then towards the North Pole. But on a ball at the equator, you don't have to turn at all, and you'll go all the way around the world.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that
And
blocks
approving
that.
the whole right turn thing.
That's right. And because on a flat Earth, we have to keep turning right. On a ball Earth, we do not. Only on the equator. That's why it needs to be done on the equator.
I get it now. Yeah.
Okay. Does that make sense to you, Jeran?
For sure. What do you mean? Yeah. That's what we've always said, that on a globe, it's this circle. They don't think that. They didn't teach us that. They make us think east and west are straight lines, but only on the equator is there a path that would take you around the Earth that you wouldn't have to turn.
Yep, exactly. So, I mean, undebunkable. There is no excuse they could possibly come back with. And we do it in triple redundancy as far as gyros, and we do it in double redundancy as far as direction. And bada bing. Yeah. And so I'm thinking a couple $1,000s for that, for the gyros, the flight. We can rent a small plane, hire a pilot down there. The question is who do we know that's near the equator?
Iru.
You know anybody at the equator, buddy?
Man, I can go with you, but I am very
It's
far
just a walk
away.
there.
from
You
the
could
equator,
you could just
I
walk
am
there.
like, I don't know, 8,000 kilometers or more from the equator.
Aren't you in like Spain or something like that, though?
No, I'm in Argentina.
Argentina.
I am
Okay.
very, very very, very out of the center of the equator in the South
Argentina.
continent. It's huge country, and we are almost at the edge of the world, like Ushuaia.
Why is your time zone? Why is your time zone so different over there?
Well, I don't know, man. It's because the Earth is flat, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
Yep. So I'm thinking the budget for that somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 out the door, and we have irrefutable proof.
Wait, for powered gyros?
Well, the gyros are only $150 a piece.
But they can remain powered?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I know that.
What you do is you use the starter mechanism on it, and you do what John Savage did, is you mount the starter to the other side of the gimbal permanently, and
then just reweight it.
And then put the battery pack on the other side to counterweight it. And like I said, we've already tested it, and we know that it will measure a 15 degree per hour drift because we put it on a little timer that goes around a circle like that. And not only did it register, but it registered it dead ass accurate, right? So, and these gyros are far beyond anything Foucault had. So yeah, we get two of those. Their gyros are 125 a piece, and then you have to have the gimbal mounting kits, which are another 25. So two of those are $300. And then when you figure in pilot, aircraft rental, and whatever else we need, of course we have to have enough cameras to record it all. $2,000 and $3,000, and we got out the door positive proof that is irrefutable. I think it's an awesome idea.
Me too.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, so you ready, Euro?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, take it away.
Okay, let me just share the screen and let me know if I'm presenting now.
You are.
Perfect. So the thing is, at least like something to keep in mind. We have here in Uruguay and Argentina, we have two places that was built for connecting between light. Let me just explain a little bit. This is called is historic. Let me first Uruguay map. Let me just present where we are right now, so you can at least take a mental picture. This is our flat world, okay? Africa, United States. This the line of Equator, Brazil, Paraguay, and we have, this is my city, La Plata, and this country is called Uruguay. So we have a lot of observation between this coast called Colonia to La Plata and to Buenos Aires, especially this branch here, this gap here between this is there is a river. It's not an ocean. This is a river, and there was a story, a real story, which take these two buildings called the Salvio and Barolo. These two buildings, this one is on Buenos Aires in Argentina, and the other one is in Montevideo, which is the capital of Uruguay. The architect was an Italian guy, really related with Freemasonry, of course, and Dante Alighieri and the Divine Comedy type of things. And the building is amazing, especially the one in Buenos Aires. It has 14 floors representing the Inferno and the heaven, the ascending to the heaven and the going to the Inferno. It's really nice. The building is one of the most beautiful buildings built in Argentina. It has a complete story that I'm not going to present because it's in Spanish, but this guy was the architect, and there is a lot of documentary here because it's so nice to take a ride inside that it's worth it. So in the top of the building, they put a lighthouse, not just in the Buenos Aires, but also in the Uruguay, in the Montevideo building. The fact is that we have 220 kilometers between Buenos Aires and Montevideo. This is the red line, is the distance between Buenos Aires and Montevideo. And all the idea behind these two buildings was to build a bridge of light. You can put whatever symbology came from Masons and talking about light and bridges, you know how they are. But the fact is that the building only have it has 100 100 meters to the top, and the other one in the coast of Uruguay, it's around the same type of height. The thing here is like if you go to explicit and strictly geometrical calculations, we have like 3,230 meters of curvature between Buenos Aires and Montevideo. Of course, if you do the math, it's impossible to connect in a straight line the two lighthouses on the top of the building. And what I want to present is because they are like rewriting the history in some way. Because right now, for example, if you go to Wikipedia and you type the Salvio Palace, I don't know how this been translated with this word, but the original name is Salvio, and you take a look at the historic things, blah blah blah, you're gonna find that there is a special let me translate this because I lost the translation. Give me one moment.
Well, palisade.
Okay.
Palisade means salvation. Salvation of the palace.
Okay. Well, it has sense, yes. But the thing is that what happened here? Give me one. Because it's still translated. Yeah, I don't know why some part are translated and the other on the other part not. Okay. So this is the main idea behind these two buildings. The original idea of the Italian immigrant Mario Palanti, architect of both buildings, was to unite the two cities with a bridge of light over the Rio of La Plata, which is the river. There you have it, the picture. From the lighthouses located in the domes of both buildings as a sign of welcome to the region of La Plata. Finally, due to miscalculations, the light of both headlights could never meet. So this last phrase here was introduced in 2019 to this article. First of all, it's really rare that this type of architect make miscalculations. That is, in my opinion, because these guys was really genius in what they are doing, and they test a lot of things before doing something, you know. So the miscalculation, it's a little strange concept. But if you go to the Wayback Machine, for example, and you go to articles, written before this modern date, this has a complete different thing, because it says the bridge of light signs both palaces illuminated the night and their beam reached the other coast. So it's 220 kilometers, and these two buildings was able to connect between them in a straight line with the light, with the lighthouse on the top. And why they are so care about rewriting articles based on the discussion of the flat earth, because of course this allow the interpretation of a flat earth, because the distances, it's very hard to connect two of these. It does. It
absolutely does.
Well, this is one point, but of course this was in the old times. But right now we have, the cities keep growing, and we start building or constructing more tall buildings than these original ones. And for example, right now we have, let me go really quickly. Right now we have, for example, if you go to Uruguay, not to Montevideo, but instead to Colonia, let me recap. Colonia is this place here, and you make a calculation to the port of Buenos Aires. You have approximately, depends of where you are in Uruguay, but it's approximately 50 kilometers, okay, 50 kilometers of distance. And if you make the calculations, you have, in a strict geometry calculation, you have 200 meters of curvature at ground zero. Of course, if you go up like 1 meter and a half, you're gonna have almost 180 meters of curvature. And we don't have so much, height buildings in Argentina. The most high building that we have, it's only 203 meters with 3 centimeters. There you have the 33, which is the Alvear Tower. Then the other buildings, which are really, really low in quantity, we have these other 12, 13 buildings, but they are all really small in comparison with the big one. But the problem is that you can take not just pictures, but you can take videos, and you can see, for example, this is a little bit higher than 1 meter and a half, because this is the camera on here is placed about 3 meters above the river. But here with a simple camera, without any intentions of demonstrable flat Earth, because this was just a regular tourist taking a video from Uruguay to Buenos Aires. Here you can see the tower, the Alvear Tower, which is this one here. But not just that one, you can see quite a lot of very, very other buildings, which are...
It's a mirage.
Yeah, of course. Which are more far away, and there are, in other cities, not just in Buenos Aires, in the coastline of Buenos Aires. There is also, you are looking at buildings more beyond the coast of Buenos Aires, which doesn't even have 100 meters in the size. Okay, so here we have like our own Michigan Lake to Chicago skyline observation, and for finish, we have, for example, pictures. This is not from video, but pictures all over the place with the skyline of Buenos Aires and beyond Buenos Aires. And here you can see a lot of buildings in the horizon line. And for example, this picture was taken almost at the height of the coast of the river. Here you can see a lot of buildings that belong, like I said before, to other cities more far away than Buenos Aires. And the picture in this case was taken almost at the river elevation. Of course, it's not ground zero, but it has almost 1-2 meter at most. So we have like a lot of, here you have more quality pictures. Of course, we all understand that the buildings was caught in the baseline because perspective, angular resolution, angle of incidence of how perspective works. But I can say that
compression.
Maybe, yeah, exactly. So I can say that maybe only the top of the top part of 2 or 3 buildings is able to see if the Earth is a sphere of 12,000 kilometers of diameter. So we have a lot of other pictures with the different weather conditions and light conditions where you can able to see more or less buildings, but you can see a little bit of refraction mirage based on the perspective angle. Then we have like a time lapse from Buenos Aires. This is a public video because this was taken from an official site and without any intention of, showing the flat Earth. But this is the what I'm trying to say. This is the, the buildings of the coast of Buenos Aires, and then you have, of course, more small building in the background belong to other part of the city. This is the skyline that we are referenced. And there is a lot of building that, of course, maybe have only 50 meters, 60 meters, no more than that. And in this time lapse, it's very nice because I don't know how much left to reach the coast of Uruguay, but here you can see the sunset and the effect, the type of Cami effects with the sun going away and projecting the buildings in the contrast image there. And what I'm trying to expose here is this is something that we can do today because we have the technology, we have the equipment, and start continually appear more and more evidence of not curvature. But the fact that they are rewriting Wikipedia to avoid the idea of reaching 220 kilometers coast to coast and rewriting and saying now is based on miscalculation. So they never meet. For me, it's
amazing.
It's a win. It's a win. It's a win battle.
Yeah, for sure it is.
Flatters.
Just admit
So
it
this
right
is-
there.
I'd love to get more of those pictures and the dates on them. I was doing the study with the Rob Skiba Chicago Skyline videos and Joshua Nowicki, and how I got a huge collection of Joshua Nowicki's pictures, and you could see them all throughout the year, not just one particular time of year. And I thought that was really telling right there.
Yeah.
And so I'm really interested in seeing more of these pictures and kind of looking at the different times that each picture was taken and the details on that, because that's.
And I'm trying to.
right there.
I'm trying to find my video and I can't find it, so I'll just tell people how to do it if they want to do it at their house and see what it's like. If you were to either on a piece of paper or kind of cut out these kind of cardboard buildings and put them down the hallway or something, and then lay down a blanket as if that's going to be your water, and then take a magnifying glass all the way towards, where you're going to be looking across your blanket, which is going to be your water, at these buildings across. If you just lower that magnifying glass till it hits the ground, you'll notice that the buildings on the far end get occulted by the blanket. The blanket takes up more than half of that building. Even though you're just laying a blanket on a flat ground, you're putting the building standing up on a flat ground. There is no way that any part of the flat ground can be blocking any of the buildings, but that's what magnifying glasses do. And that's what the atmosphere is a lens. So
it's a lens, yeah, completely.
Right, so it is magnifying what's right behind it. And so you're going to get your viewpoint as far as you can see of just water, and then it's going to magnify what's right behind it, which is the water. So you're getting the water, then the magnified water, which is going to lift it a little bit and cover those back buildings.
And just for finish, it's a related topic, but when you use this software, it's free online, the panoramic, I don't know how to exactly the name of the, panoramic recreation, and you type the longitude, the latitude, the height where you are, and they show you the panorama of this, the horizon, and how much you be able to see in terms of the curvature of the Earth. I just for make some because I was boring, I put the elevation of 10 kilometers with observation 360 around those 10 kilometers of height, and of course you are able only to see 357 kilometers from your center point. This is because if you are flying on the plane and you are flying at 10 kilometers of elevation, you only can see 350 kilometers if the conditions of the weather allow you. And that is why, for me, the observation of Chitolan is amazing, because, for example, this is one of the best observations, at least for me, my opinion, where he can see mountains very, very far away, like 3 times that.
That's incredible.
Distance. It's incredible, and there is no way in terms of, if the Earth isn't flat, you cannot see. There is no atmospheric refraction here. There is no superior mirage, because you are not on top of the lens of the atmosphere, but you are in the very, very, privileged point of view, in terms of that you are not leading with all the air that we have on the ground. So in these conditions, you can see really far away. We are talking 3 times more than the math predicts on the globe Earth. So, this is, for me, are the most important observation or experiment that you can show and present as something, irrefutable, because it's a direct observation. Then we need to explain a lot of things to ourselves, like the eclipses or the gyro of the Earth spinning or whatever. But this is a clear observation of a geometry problem. The Earth between flat and sphere is a geometrical problem. It's not optic problem, or it's not spinning or not spinning. We have a geometrical problem that we need to discuss, and this type of observation are really incredible. It's amazing. That's all, guys.
Excellent. All right. Beautiful, Aaron. Well, that was very informative. I like that. That was well worth it for sure. Cool. Okay, guys. Well, there you have it. Yeah, super good. And I hope I didn't get too far over, a lot of people's heads. I will endeavor to narrow in on a lot of these, specific subjects. I know Austin likes to do that too. But one of the things that I really wanted to make people understand is that, just because we cannot necessarily apply the rigorous scientific method to something does not mean that there is not evidence for it. Okay. And again, that's why I've always operated under the principle of a preponderance of evidence, because you can have a million things pointing at the trueness of something, but not be able to actually manipulate an independent variable on it. But that doesn't mean that it automatically loses out in being something that is a valid manifestation. Okay. So that's all I'm saying is we need to look at things because of the fact that we are dealing with outside the box thinking. Then we have to kind of adjust our thinking to that, right? And understand that, when the scientific method applies, that's great that we can do that, but it's something that is simply not always going to be, possible to apply because there are some things that we simply cannot control. But on the other hand, there's enough empirical evidence that sure makes it look like, there's an ether and that there's, vibration going on in matter. In fact, we actually know that. A lot of our physics tell us that. They just don't tell us quite the specific manifestations of it. So
with evidence there's convicting evidence and there's non-convicting evidence. And so there's evidence is a broad term that people tend to treat a little too heavily. They take it too serious and say, oh, well, there's no evidence at all. But no, there's a lot of small pieces, and we're just trying to put those small pieces together to get the big picture. And then the big picture is the really convicting evidence that we're trying to achieve.
Exactly. And I think, it's been my position that those who will, when they say they can't vary the independent variable or, vary something to prove causation, I tend to think that their problem is they do that because they don't know what else to do. They can't offer an alternative. So they just say, well, this doesn't meet this criteria, so it must not be real. Can't exist. And that is exactly the kind of narrow inside the box thinking, I think, that got us into, part of the mess that we're in today. And of course, conversely, by assuming too much of that does the same thing. So it's kind of like a fine line balance, but you just have to be reasonable about your thoughts. And again, it's all about the preponderance of evidence. And I think that's going to take us further than anything before. And that's how classical physics has always worked. And it has always worked quite well until Einstein. So there you have it. All right, guys. So let's go around one last time for anybody who may have anything to say, and we'll call it a show. And so, Austin, since you're not feeling great, I will let you go first. How's that sound?
Okay. I was making sure I didn't have the background. Yeah, so like I said at the beginning, I've been meeting with a couple attorneys, talking to some attorneys. We got a lot of stuff going on, and I'll be coming out probably. I meant to do it earlier today, but I'll come out either tonight and tomorrow with a video updating everyone, and then we'll go from there. Got a lot of updates, and I'm feeling pretty good now, so I'm sure tomorrow I'll feel better. And yeah, great show as always.
All right, beautiful. Glad to hear that. All right, and so over to you, Iro. What do you got coming up, sir?
Well, I'm going to read the article of Neptune just to point out the crap that NASA and other space agencies are giving us to be instruct and be, focusing other things more than what we need focus for real.
Saturn, right?
Okay, no calls And then we are.
You meant Saturn, though, right? Saturn.
Yeah, we are very carried by Saturn rings because in 300 million years we're going to lose all those ice pieces or
well, didn't you know that I think it's about 700 million years or so that the moon of Mars is going to crash into?
No, man, no.
I just found out. I just heard about it.
So depressed.
I just heard about it. It's really tough.
What a Sunday crap thing,
Yeah.
you know.
Been nice knowing you guys.
Oh man,
it's been fun.
No, what I say is that we are almost only 10 days from the Flat Earth Conference here in Argentina. We feel two dates. I mean, you know, two dates. 25 of May and 26. We have a lot of people getting involved in the, you know, trying to not participate because there is. Let me just recap. We make a Flat Earth conference here in Argentina on 26 and 25 of May, and both dates are full. There is going to be like 500 people coming out to the theater and trying to, you know, raise their voices because we're trying to make some noise in the regular media. And we are doing it in a very, very strategic point because we rent a theater in the middle of the town where all the rest of the theaters are here in Argentina, the most well-known theaters. So we are trying to, you know, make some smash, when you trying to bring people from the street and trying to convince flat
smacking. Okay.
Yeah, that word. Thank you. So we are very happy to reach so much people, and they are coming from other countries too, from Chile, from Uruguay. So it's going to be very nice, and we're going to try to again, penetrate the headlines of the mass media here in Argentina. So we are preparing all the, we are in the final countdown, and we are start making a little bit nervous, and trying to put all together. Yeah, it's nice, but with a little stress,
All right, sounds good. Fun. All right, and Kyle, what do you have coming up this week, sir?
Well, tomorrow I'm hoping to get out my new video, which is about the Utah State Board of Education and their stance on orbital motion. And so it's part of my deprogramming thing on my daughter's textbook. She came back with her 6th grade textbook from science and took a look at it and said, wow, this is interesting, because when it comes to their stance on orbital mechanics, they don't mention centripetal force, they don't mention centrifugal force at all. All they mention is inertia and gravity. That's it. And so I'm doing a big response on that, and it'll be fun.
Yeah, that sounds like it. Cool. Okay. You just popped out, so we'll see you next week, Hero. And glad you're with us. So cool. That ought to be interesting. And I think a lot of parents with kids need to really start standing up to the system and demanding something be done about the curriculum. That so many things, especially what you do, is you take these textbooks, which are introduction to things, and they jump right to the conclusion right out of the box. It's like that's not a logical progression of thought for teaching children,
Here, let's teach all these kindergartners calculus and all these advanced concepts before they can never really understand the foundation it's built upon.
Yeah, exactly. So there you have it. So, all right, cool. Well, Jeran, you are last but not least. What do you got coming up this week?
Simple stuff. I got to do some recording for that Jeranism Does segment, and then I've got Thursday show and Friday show, and I think I might be doing something Wednesday night, maybe another comedy show. I got to talk with somebody, the NASA Comedy Hour, and then back to do it again with Thursday and Friday. That's about it.
It sounds good. So whatever you're eating sounds good.
Me?
Yeah. Are you
nothing I'm drinking.
Oh, you're drinking. Okay, God, it sounded like you were eating something because I'm hearing just nom, nom, nom.
Oh, no, sorry.
No worries. No big deal. All right, guys, cool. Well, we are done for the day. We will see you on Wednesday. And until then, be good to each other. Don't lie to each other. Open your mind. There's truth inside. Peace out, everybody.
Peace.